Chapter 180. Sorry for being late by more than an hour. The plot twist was written super slowly. It took almost 6 hours. Disciples of the 100 Empire ranking. Old Man is the manager of the 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce, Wuxia. First of all, Old Man represents the 50 great sects that organized this year's 100 Empire ranking to congratulate all of you on successfully completing your training. A few minutes later, a white-haired old man with a youthful complexion and an amiable face stepped on an auspicious cloud and slowly landed on the rostrum as he spoke softly. His faint and not loud voice clearly traveled into the ears of the disciples who were still discussing spiritedly. The entire martial arts practice field immediately quieted down. Your luck for this year's 100 Empire ranking is very good. You've encountered a powerful area that is rarely seen in the divine martial remains. It's much better than the areas that have been opened in the past. The inheritance and improvement you've obtained from the remains are also better than the previous years. However, this is only the beginning. 3 days later, the 100 Empire ranking competition will officially begin. The 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce is one of the 5 great chambers of commerce in the Eastern continent. It is also the manager in charge of organizing this year's 100 Empire ranking. There are tens of thousands of sects in the Eastern continent. Not all sects participate in the 100 Empire ranking that is held every 2 years. Every year, 50 sects will be chosen from those who have signed up. Your training grounds, expenses, etc. will all be funded by these 50 sections. The higher the grade of the sect, the greater the amount of funding. Dongfangting, who was still beside Chun Hao's group of 5, explained while the old man spoke. Senior sister, I've also heard of the Dragon Transformation ranking. Do you know of it? When the manager of the 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce, Wuxia, began to introduce the details of the 50 sects one by one, Chun Hao could not help but ask the question in his heart. He had already known from Xia Yuyu that the Dragon Transformation ranking was in existence higher than the 100 Empire ranking. But now, it seemed that they only needed the 100 Empire ranking to enter the sects of the cultivation world. Furthermore, until now no one had mentioned the Dragon Transformation ranking. Of course I know. The Dragon Transformation ranking is in existence higher than the 100 Empire ranking. The intensity of the competition is far from what the 100 Empire ranking can compare to. You will naturally know these things when you truly begin to live in the cultivation world. The Dragon Transformation list was a competition set up by the entire Eastern continent's cultivation world for those cultivators who did not belong to any sections. In other words, they were loose cultivators, or the genius disciples of the super dynasties, large clans, and forces of the cultivation world that did not belong to any sect. The so-called Dragon Transformation was like a fish leaping over the Dragon Gate, reaching the heavens in a single bound. It was also one of the ways the sects selected disciples. Compared to the 100 Empire rankings, there are many more choices. All the sects in the cultivation world of the Eastern continent pay close attention to it. What are the conditions to participate? Chun Hao asked. Why, do you want to participate? Dongfangting asked, slightly taken aback. I just want to know more, Chun Hao said. Below the age of 20, with a cultivation level of 6th stage martial saint and above, and without the restrictions of a sex identity. These were the 3 basic conditions. It's meaningless to you. Why is it meaningless? It's very simple. With your current cultivation and talent, the 3 rank 7 sects in the 100 Empire ranking will fight over you. Once you enter a sect, you will be a sect disciple. With this status, you will lose the right to participate in the Dragon Transformation list. After all, the Dragon Transformation list is also used by sects to select disciples. In the cultivation world, no sect will allow betrayal. You also heard that the 3 rank 7 sects are the 10,000 Pill Pavilion, Nirvana Valley, and Celestial Apex sect. Although they are all rank 7 sects, the 10,000 Pill Pavilion is undoubtedly the strongest. The 10,000 Pill Pavilion is famous in the alchemy world. Although it is only a rank 7 sect due to the number of experts, the treatment of the 10,000 Pill Pavilion disciples is no less than that of rank 8 or even rank 9 sects. Their wealth is not something an ordinary sect can compare to. Senior sister's sword intent, you choose the 10,000 Pill Pavilion. Dongfangting said. Oh, we'll see when the time comes. Seeing that Dong Fengting had changed the topic, Chen Hao said in a low voice, "Senior sister, do you mean that once the 100 Empire ranking is out, the disciples must choose a sect to enter?" Chen Hao, you, don't tell me you really want to participate in the dragon transformation list? Dong Fengting saw that Chen Hao did not let go of this question. Clearly, it was not as simple as he said. Don't have such thoughts. Only the super geniuses in the top 3 of the 100 Empire ranking can give up the chance to choose. However, you are only a rank 9 martial ancestor now. Even if you are in the top 3, if you do not choose a sect, you will become a loose cultivator. That is definitely not possible. Not to mention that you have offended Fan Feng of the Flying Sword sect. Even if you did not offend anyone, without the protection of a sect and the benefits of cultivation, you will not be able to advance. Furthermore, you are only a rank 9 martial ancestor now. You do not meet the requirements. Furthermore, the dragon transformation list is released every 2 years. This time, it already ended last month. This means that even if you are in the top 3 and can give up the chance to choose, you must be a rank 6 martial saint and can only participate 2 years later. How could Fan Feng let you go in 2 years? Without the protection of a sect, he can kill you anytime, anywhere, as long as he finds you. Chen Hao nodded and did not say anything else. However, he already had his own thoughts in his heart. After Lu Wuxiang finished introducing all the sects, he arranged the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking into courtyards in the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. He also announced the method and rules of the 100 Empire ranking competition 3 days later. In reality, it was only the method. There were still no rules. 5 rays of light streaked across the sky. Under the guidance of the aura of the token, Chen Hao, Tantai Lian, and the other 4 arrived at a small mountain peak within 1,000 miles of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. At the peak of the mountain, clouds curled up and covered by auspicious clouds. A courtyard that seemed like a paradise occupied the center of the mountain peak. This was only one of the many courtyards in the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. However, it was comparable to the manner of a large clan in the secular world. The dense spiritual qi of heaven and earth was incomparable to that of the secular world. Li Yifeng broke the silence and said with a smile, "Phew. The world of cultivation is indeed not something the Empire can compare to. It's no wonder that the disciples who were able to enter the 100 Empire ranking were able to leave their peers in the dust when they returned to the Empire a few years later. Hall Master Mu Qing was a god in our hearts back then. Compared to her, even Senior Dong Fengting is probably inferior." Haha. They had heard the conversation between Chen Hao and Dong Fengting clearly. Although they had only known each other for 6 months, the things that Chen Hao had brought to them were absolutely unimaginable. Of course, their understanding of Chen Hao was probably not something that Dong Fengting could compare to. Therefore, although Chen Hao did not say anything in the end, they had already guessed that Chen Hao's goal had already left the 100 Empire ranking. This made the 4 of them somewhat conflicted. In particular, Li Yifeng could not bear to look at Tantai Lian, who had a bitter and silent expression on her face. After 6 months, Li Yifeng, who understood women the best, naturally discovered Tantai Lian's thoughts. "Indeed," Chen Hao said with a slight smile. After his gaze swept across the 4 of them, he looked into the distance and said, "All good things must come to an end. I know that all of you have already seen through my thoughts. Although I don't know much about the world of cultivation, I think that the grade of the sect is actually not important. What truly depends on oneself. I have a reason to participate in the dragon transformation list, but it is definitely not for a higher grade sect. When the time comes, all of you will naturally understand. Then what are you doing it for?" Hearing Chen Hao's words, the 4 of them were slightly taken aback. Tantai Lian could not help but ask. Chen Hao glanced at Tantai Lian. After pondering for a moment, he shifted his gaze and looked into the distance. His gaze became bitter, but it was also close to indifference. He hardened his heart and said softly, "A girl. She should still be alive. A girl." Tantai Lian was instantly taken aback. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng and Ni Jianpain also widened their eyes in shock. Chen Hao did not give the 4 of them, especially Tantai Lian, time to be surprised. He said directly, "All right, all of you return to your rooms to cultivate. In 3 days, the competition will officially begin. As for which sect you can enter, it will be up to you. However, I have a suggestion that you can listen to. Of course, the choice is still up to you. Chen Hao said, the division of sects from grade 1 to 9 is definitely not as simple as the division of cultivators. Otherwise, wouldn't the grade 1 and grade 2 sects have long been destroyed? For a sect, even a grade 1 sect, to be able to stand tall in the world of cultivation, it must have its own advantages. You've all heard the introductions to the various sections. Each of them has their own strengths. So when you're choosing a sect, don't just limit yourself to the level of the sect. What you should consider more is which sect is most suitable for you. Go. After Chen Hao finished speaking, his figure flashed and he walked into a room. Li Yifeng, Yang Fan and Enai Jianping glanced at Tantai Lian, whose face was slightly pale and her delicate body was slightly trembling. They could only sigh in their hearts and quietly walked into their own rooms. Tantai Lian didn't know how long she had been standing outside. It wasn't until the sky was completely dark and the cool mountain breeze blew her thin clothes and messed up her long hair that she came back to her senses. She gently wiped the corners of her eyes and walked back to her room. There were no feelings in the first place. They walked together because they were both disciples of the Xuanwu Empire. In the 6 months that they were together, other than cultivating and fighting, it was still cultivating and fighting. What did they have between them? What did she understand about him? Nothing at all. Other than his name and his talent, she knew nothing about him. So what if he saved her life? So what if he helped her cultivate? He only treated her as the same existence as Yang Fan and the other two. The only difference was that they both received the Phoenix inheritance. But after all, they were not Phoenix and Phoenix. At this time, he clearly said that it was for a girl. What did that mean? He already had someone he liked. The other party was not her. She could only be envious and jealous of her. Even though they had gone through that naked scene, it was still when they received the inheritance. They were forced to do so. Moreover, nothing had happened. Why should he be responsible? It's just my wishful thinking. Tantai Lian took one last look at Chen Hao's room and murmured. Then, she walked into her own room. Those who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. There will be more updates today. Chapter 181. Requesting monthly votes. Thank you. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 days, the outer sect elders of the 50 sects who were in charge of recruiting disciples all rushed to Green Fluorescent City, which was thousands of miles away from the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Green Fluorescent City was the largest city within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. Countless merchants gathered there, and it was one of the largest trading cities for cultivators in the eastern continent. It was also one of the gathering places for independent cultivators, large clans, and other forces. It was extremely prosperous and densely populated. Today, early in the morning, tens of thousands of people had gathered at the largest martial arts practice field of Green Fluorescent City's Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, and they were still pouring in. These people were young and old, men and women. Some had high cultivation, and many had low cultivation. However, most of them were below the martial arts grandmaster realm. The so-called cultivation world did not only consist of experts. The people who were born and raised here could be found everywhere. They had no cultivation at all, and they made up the vast majority. Just like the secular world, most of them were ordinary people, and only a few were cultivators. It was the same in the cultivation world. They were just natives of the cultivation world, and they had the right to live in the cultivation world from birth. It was unlike the secular world, where one had to go through layers of selections to obtain the right to enter the cultivation world. Of course, after entering the cultivation world with such difficulty, their status would also surpass that of ordinary people, and they would become the sect disciples that the natives of the cultivation world yearned for and envied. This time, in addition to the outer sect elder in charge of recruiting disciples, there were also many inner sect disciples from the 50 sections. These inner sect disciples were basically from the 100 Empire ranking. The reason why they came was that they might be able to rope in disciples they liked in their sections. Just like the relationship between Dongfang Ting, Xian Xian, and the others in Chen Hao's group of 5, with this relationship, At least Chen Hao's group of 5 would consider the sects that Dongfang Ting and Xian Xian belonged to. Among these inner sect disciples, Fan Fong of the Flying Sword sect was among them. Early in the morning, he sat gloomily in the Flying Sword sect's VIP seat, waiting alone. It had been 6 months. When he had obtained his sister's death from the Seal of Life and Death, he had wanted nothing more than to crush the person who had killed his sister. However, he could only endure because the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking were still training. Even if they had finished their training, he still had to endure. He could only wait until the end of the 100 Empire rankings before he would have a chance to take revenge. Seated contestant Chen Hao. I'd like to see how capable you are. Phoenix Inheritance. Don't even think about being a match for me once you've truly grown up. What's more, do you think I, Fan Fong, will give you the chance to grow? 3 days ago, when the elders of the Flying Sword sect, Xian Xian, and the other outer sect disciples had rushed to the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, he had already obtained the name of the person who had killed his sister from Tai Zigong. Originally, he didn't know what Chen Hao's name was. He only saw the appearance of the person who killed his sister when she was on the verge of death in the Seal of Life and Death. Now he finally found a match. Dong! Dong! A rising sun slowly rose from the east, accompanied by the melodious sound of a bell. The boundary of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce's core martial arts practice field slowly opened. Countless spectators immediately looked up at the sky. The densely packed cultivators flying in the air were like locusts approaching from afar, appearing before everyone's eyes. Every one of them was extremely young, and their faces were filled with excitement and anticipation. These people were the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking who had rushed over from the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce's base. Under the leadership of Lu Wuxiang and several experts of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, they directly landed on a contestant's seat in the martial arts practice field that could accommodate 5,000 people. When Chen Hao and the other disciples saw the dense crowd in the martial arts practice field, as well as the terrifying martial arts practice field that could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people, they all revealed a look of horror. They had never heard of a martial arts practice field of this level, let alone seen one. Especially before the restriction of the martial arts practice field was opened, they looked at it from the air, and it was only 1,000 feet in size. However, after entering, they discovered that it was a completely different world. It was obvious that it contained an extremely powerful spatial restriction. Layers of stairs rose up, forming circles of circular grandstands. At the lowest point of the grandstand's core, there was a circular platform with a diameter of 3,000 feet. On the platform, there was a core main arena. 10 small arenas were evenly distributed around the main arena. Although they were called small arenas, they were larger than all the arenas Chen Hao had seen, not to mention the incomparably huge main arena. What a strong aura! This year's 100 Empire ranking is indeed the strongest in recent years. It's said that it has something to do with the opening of the Shenwu ruins this time. Many people have obtained powerful inheritances. Yes. The 10 seated contestants are divided into 10 groups, with 328 people in each group. There are a total of 3,280 disciples. The list of opponents for the first round of elimination has been decided. The 10-sided arena will open at the same time. Now the competition officially begins. Following Lu Wuxiang's crisp voice, the referees of the 10-sided arena appeared one after another. First group, first round. Seated contestant Gao Jianfei vs. Yang Wei. Please enter the arena. Second group, first round. Seated contestant Meng Yi vs. Chen Jun. Please enter the arena. Third group, first round. Seated contestant Leng Yihan vs. Fanja. Please enter the arena. 10th group, first round. Seated contestant Chen Hao vs. Qiu Qianli. Please enter the arena. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Following the loud voice of the referees of the 10-sided arena, 10 figures rose into the air without any hesitation and flew directly to their respective arenas. These 10 people were the 10 seated contestants, and the other 10 people's faces turned green. It was undoubtedly extremely unlucky to encounter the strongest seated contestant in the first round of elimination. Moreover, these 10 people were all in the middle of the 3,000 disciples. This arrangement was equivalent to following the Black Tower tablet's ranking. Those above the middle were the advanced group, and those below the middle were the lower group. The strongest contestant of the advanced group was going against the strongest contestant of the lower group. It was very reasonable. But now these 10 people would rather be ranked lower or higher. At least they would have a chance to perform. I admit defeat. I admit defeat. Although unwilling, the 10 people all chose to admit defeat without exception. This arrangement made it so that in the first round, there were more than 100 battles in each group. Only 10 or so people would fight on the arena, and the others would all admit defeat. No one dared to joke with their lives. To be able to make it this far, they would at least be able to enter a lower sect. It was better than risking their lives knowing that they could not win. That would be too stupid. And in the 10 groups, there were more than 100 people fighting on the arena. Very few of the lower-ranked contestants won, only 7 of them. In the first round, Chen Hao and the other 4 all won, and none of them had to fight. At the end of the first round, half of the disciples were eliminated. There were only 164 people left in each group. Next, the arrangement of the second round was still the same as the first round. There were still many people who admitted defeat. But this time, there were several times more people who did not admit defeat in the lower group than in the first round. The 10 seeded contestants still did not have a chance to fight. Tantai Lian was ranked 30th overall, and she was in the same group as Chen Hao. She was the third expert in the 10th group. Basically, the top 3 experts in each group did not have a chance to fight in the second round. Yang Fan and Ai Jianping and Li Yifeng all fought and won. The 5 of them advanced again. After the 2 rounds, there were only 82 people in each group. The arrangement did not change, but in the third round, except for the 10 seeded contestants, no one admitted defeat in any of the battles. The gap between each group was not too big. Everyone wanted to go on the arena and show off their talents so that the elders of the 50 sects would notice them. If they could catch the attention of a powerful sect, it would naturally be better. Tantai Lian and Yang Fan won easily. And Ai Jianping and Li Yifeng won with difficulty. At the end of the third round, there were only 41 people left in each group. At this time, the Black Pagoda tablet selected the 2 weakest people in each group to fight based on their combat power in the first 3 rounds. The loser would be eliminated. The winner would be in the top 40 of the group. Then the 4th and 5th rounds began. Finally, when the sky was almost dark, the top 10 of each group were decided. Chen Hao did not have a chance to fight, and Tantai Lian advanced to the top 10 easily. Yang Fan, who had comprehended the true essence of the wind element, also advanced to the top 10 easily. Meanwhile, Ai Jianping and Li Yifeng lost in the 5th round. Such a result was within his expectations. The real exciting battles were the round-robin matches after the top 10. It would officially begin tomorrow. Second update. Looking for monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Chapter 182. Third update. Those who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. It was night. The night sky was clear, and the stars were shining brightly. In a cultivation room in a courtyard on the top of a mountain, there was a dense aura. A young man was sitting cross-legged, floating in mid-air. His body was shining with a resplendent 7-colored light that was incomparably intense. This kind of aura was clearly an existence that had already comprehended the mysteries of the 5 elements. What was even more shocking was that a coiled creature vaguely appeared above his head. Although it was only a few dozen feet long and was only an illusion, it made the young man's aura many times more terrifying. If anyone saw this creature, they would definitely be extremely shocked. Azure Dragon. Boom. As the dense aura around the young man's body became thicker and thicker, the moment it reached its peak, the young man's clothes suddenly exploded with a boom. In an instant, an extremely bright 7-colored light shone out, and the entire training room rumbled and shook. If this training room was the kind of training room in the mortal world, it would have collapsed directly. Roar. At that moment, the coiled azure dragon above the young man's head suddenly flew up, and let out a dragon's roar that resounded through the heavens and earth. Even the powerful restrictions of the cultivation room were unable to stop the dragon's roar. In an instant, The mountain peak within a radius of a few hundred miles began to tremble. Rumbling sounds could be heard as countless rocks rolled down from the mountain peak. The huge commotion caused countless cultivators to walk out of their training rooms in shock. Whoosh! In the training room, the soaring azure dragon circled a few times above the young man's head, and then directly entered between the young man's eyebrows. Crack, crack. At that moment, the young man's completely naked body emitted strange cracking sounds. Sparkling and translucent azure dragon scales started to form on the young man's skin. First it was his hands and feet, then his arms, legs, and then his body. Gradually, it spread to his face. His entire body was completely covered by the dragon scales. The young man opened his eyes and stared at his own body with great excitement. Then his 5 fingers opened into a claw. Immediately, his hand strangely began to grow, and in an instant, it became an extremely sharp dragon claw. Just the aura alone was terrifying to the extreme. I have finally completely merged with the inheritance of the divine beast Azure Dragon. Ha 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 ha, just in time, very good. Ha ha. I've only completed the first step of fusion. What's there to be excited about? At this moment, a childish voice sounded in the young man's mind. The voice was childish, but it sounded old. Of course I am. If I could have gotten my hands on you earlier in the Shenwu ruins, and not at the last moment, why would I have to risk my life now? Among the 10 seeded players, there will definitely be a place for me. Fortunately, they had finally fused tonight. Otherwise, if they were unlucky and met that kid tomorrow and were eliminated, wouldn't that be a pity? Now, not only have I succeeded in fusing with the divine light, I have also borrowed your power to break through to rank 1 martial saint. Ha ha ha. How could I not be excited? What bullshit seeded player? The champion of the 100 Empire rankings is none other than me. Ha ha ha. Don't be too complacent. Since you've obtained the inheritance of the Azure Dragon, the inheritances of the White Tiger, the Black Tortoise, the Vermilion Bird, the Qilin, and the Phoenix should also have appeared. The Vermilion Bird is the most troublesome, and the Phoenix is troublesome as well. However, this is a one-on-one competition. Facing the Phoenix and the Phoenix alone is not a threat to you. The others are about the same. The key is still up to you. I'm already a martial sage. Who can compare to me? It's said that the seeded player in my group, Chen Hao, is the one who obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. Then he should have only obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. He's not a threat, as long as you're stronger than him. Of course, he's only a rank 9 martial ancestor. Although, it's said that he's a very abnormal guy. I'm now a martial sage. Why would I be afraid of him? I can truly use the energy of the 5 elements. I can feel that my current strength has increased by tens of times. I was originally ranked 20, only 10 places away from him. I'm actually looking forward to meeting him tomorrow. Ha ha ha. The aura of the Azure Dragon. Chen Hao. There's indeed someone who obtained the Azure Dragon's inheritance. White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Qilin. There's definitely someone who obtained it too. Little Bird said with a trace of surprise in Chen Hao's mind. At almost the same time, there were 4 other youths, 2 males and 2 females, who had the same conversation with Chen Hao on the other 4 mountain peaks. However, those 4 youths, after a short moment of shock, began to madly cultivate, making the final dash. This was completely different from the majority of the top 10 disciples in the group, because at this moment, the competition had already begun. It was too late to work hard now. Adjusting oneself to the best state and facing it with the best mentality was the best choice. But these 4 people were different. Because they were the same as that youth, they had obtained the White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise and Qilin's inheritance respectively. However, until now they had not truly completed the first step of the fusion. Chen Hao, if you meet them, you have to be careful. Are you really not going to be with Xiaolian? I mean in the future. There's no other way for the competition now. But in the future, only when Phoenix and I work together can we unleash our true power. Alone, there's no way we can contend against the 5 divine beasts. I've never thought of borrowing the strength of your inheritance. Chen Hao said bluntly. Is there a way for you and Phoenix to give it to Xiaolian? There is. There is? Why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, you would have reunited earlier. Tell me how to do it. It's very simple. As long as you and Xiao Lian have yin and yang intercourse and let her truly reach the realm of yin and yang balance, Phoenix and I can do any of you. That's equivalent to not saying anything. Go back to your nest, don't bother me, Chen Hao said with a frown. Right now he was indeed a little annoyed, because there were some things that even he himself did not know whether he was doing the right thing or not. The previous to him did not have any emotional experience. One was Xia Yuyu, whom he had met by accident, as if it was destined by fate. The other was Helian Wuxia, whom he had molested and had developed feelings for. Especially when he thought of Helian Wuxia, who had never truly exposed her feelings, crazily hitting the transmission light pillar with tears streaming down her face. Moreover, he was certain that 2 years later, Helian Wuxia would definitely be able to stand out from the 100 Empire rankings. These two already made him not know where to go. He could not tell which was more important, and which was less. He could only let nature take its course and take one step at a time. How could he dare to do more? Moreover, right now he did not want to have any emotional fetters. This was also one of the main reasons why he did not want to choose a sect on the 100 Empire rankings. Otherwise, there was no doubt that Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, and the others would choose the same sect as him. Moreover, with Tantai Lian's talent, there was probably no sect that would reject her. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ninai Jianpain also had high hopes. Therefore, when Tantai Lian asked why, he said that it was for a girl, for a breath of air. In reality, it was just for a breath of air. He, who exuded arrogance from his bones, would ruthlessly slap anyone who had once despised and ridiculed him. He wanted to let Xia Yuyu's family see that he, an insignificant person in a small county in the secular world, was not inferior to any bullshit genius. Therefore, he wanted to stand out from the rest on the dragon transformation list and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. He wanted to become a target that the top sects of the Eastern continent would fight over. Only then would he be able to vent the depression in his heart. Cutting off the distracting thoughts in his mind, Chen Hao immersed himself in the comprehension of merging with the world. Today's group competition for the top 10 will be a round-robin competition. You will draw lots to determine your opponents. Each person will have 2 matches per day. The first and second place contestants will advance from their groups and enter the top 20 overall. All contestants, please step onto the stage and draw lots. The next day, the group competition for the top 10 officially began. The martial arts arena, which could hold hundreds of thousands of people, was filled to the brim today. Countless rogue cultivators, sect disciples, and experts from large families and factions rushed into the arena. At least half of them were here to make a bet. In the long life of the cultivation world, this was undoubtedly one of the greatest pleasures. Especially for the sect disciples, the poorer rogue cultivators were even more enthusiastic about it. Soon the results of the draw were out. Each group of 10 contestants drew a number from 1 to 10. In the first round, number 1 would fight number 2, number 3 would fight number 4, and so on. Each group would have 5 matches. The 10 groups would proceed with their matches one by one. After completing the first round, they would all fight in the central arena. First group, first match, number 1 Li Yuran and number 2, Wan Yi, please step onto the stage. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures immediately flew from the contestants' seats to the arena. The aura around them bloomed as they flew. Wan Yi, ranked 11th on the pagoda stele, and Li Yuran, ranked 91st. There's no suspense in the outcome. If nothing unexpected happens, Li Yuran will lose. The odds for this match aren't high. I bet 100,000 grade 8 spirit pills. Even if I win, I'll only earn 10,000 pills. Your way of betting is too steady. You won't make a fortune. I only bet 10,000 pills on Wan Yi winning. If I win, I'll earn 100,000 pills. Huh. That's a waste. What if? Don't forget that guy's name is Wan Yi. Wan Yi, if he loses, won't I make a fortune? Winning big with small is the shortcut to riches. Anyway, I won't die if I lose. Countless people in the audience began to discuss when Wan Yi and Li Yuran entered the arena. Clearly, in the round-robin competition for the top 10 contestants, there were corresponding odds for each match. Chen Hao and the other disciples of the 100 Empire ranking were shocked when they heard the discussions. The wealth of the cultivation world was, of course, even more shocking was the wealth of the myriad treasures Chamber of Commerce. This was a martial arts arena with hundreds of thousands of people. How many people had bet? Even if each person bet 1,000 pills, how much would that be? How much wealth would one need to afford such a bet? Boom. Boom. Following the referee's words, Wan Yi and Liu Ran's aura soared crazily at the same time. Ah. What? What is this? Almost in an instant before the two had even started fighting, they had only activated their protective auras and raised their battle intent, which caused the entire martial arts practice field to erupt into cries of surprise. Numerous gazes were instantly locked onto Liu Ran's figure. Divine Beast Black Tortoise? Requesting monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 183. First update. Requesting for monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Dark Mountain is going all out. The promise is still there, but our monthly votes today, we only have a pitiful 2 votes. An enormous image was faintly discernible as it enveloped Liu Ran's body. If that wasn't the appearance of the Divine Beast Black Tortoise, what else could it be? It really is the Divine Beast's inheritance. Fuck, what a loss. Haha, we've struck it rich. Following the exclamations of the several 100,000 spectators in the martial practice field, the elders of the 50 different sects on the viewing platform also revealed expressions of excitement. This was especially true for the elders of the 3 rank 7 sections. The gazes with which they looked at Liu Ran already revealed an aura of absolute certainty. Last night, the enormous commotion caused by the appearance of the Divine Beast Azure Dragon's inheritance had already confirmed the rumors. It was even more conclusive that Chen Hao and Tantai Lian had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. And now, Liu Ran had obtained the Divine Beast Black Tortoise's inheritance with their own eyes. What did this mean? It meant that it was very possible that the inheritances of the strongest divine beasts of the Divine Martial Empire would all appear. No wonder the auras of the 100 Empire rankings disciples this time around were much stronger than the previous tens of years. This time around, the Divine Martial Remnant has indeed opened the most valuable area. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that we won't have a share of the disciples that obtained the Divine Beast's inheritance. However, it's still pretty good. No matter what, the disciples that will obtain this time around are all stronger than before. The elders on the viewing platform were also spiritedly discussing. Humph, the inheritance of the Divine Beast Black Tortoise. You want to defeat me with just this? You're nothing more than a coward. Watch as I shatter your turtle shell. Go to hell. Collapsing sword slash. On the stage, Wan Yi, who originally had absolute confidence in his victory, was currently not afraid in the slightest despite being shocked. The aura on his body immediately soared crazily once again. His mouth was still as majestic as before. No matter what, he was still a rank 9 martial emperor, an expert ranked 11th on the pagoda stele. How could he possibly be frightened by the Divine Beast's inheritance? Boom. Just as he finished speaking, Wan Yi took a step forward. Surging origin power whizzed up. In an instant, it condensed into incomparably valiant sword light. It shone with a resplendent, breathtaking luster and a frightening, sharp aura. With a hiss, it was as if 10,000 rays of light shot out from the spiritual sword in his hand. Every ray of sword light contained a frightening amount of energy. It was enough to kill a 7th-level martial grandmaster expert. Such a frightening amount of power caused the entire audience in the martial arts practice field to be shocked. Especially the few contestants in the same group as Wan Yi. They were even more terrified. Ranked 11th on the Black Pagoda Monument, the second-ranked expert of the group, he was indeed not someone they could contend against. Xian Wu change. Liu Ran, who seemed to be shrouded in a tortoise shell, had a gloomy and disdainful expression on his face as he stared at the terrifying sword light that was rapidly approaching him. Black Tortoise Transformation. As the word change came out of his mouth, the phantom of the Divine Beast Black Tortoise that shrouded him suddenly shrank several times, like a layer of protective gang qi that clung to his body. It emitted an extremely cold aura. and his whole body was shrouded in a mysterious icy blue color. Pung 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 pung. At the same time, dense explosive sounds were emitted from under Liu Ran's feet. His whole body actually welcomed Wang Yi's attack with his bare hands. Both of his feet tapped on the ground, and wherever he passed, a series of deep pits appeared. His speed became faster and faster, and the entire arena that was shrouded in a barrier began to tremble violently. The terrifying sword light was as fast as lightning, and the moment it was about to collide with Liu Ran. Roar! Liu Ran was like an ancient fierce beast, and he let out a violent roar. Above his head, there was a faint phantom of the black tortoise stretching its neck. In an instant, the icy blue light on his body became more and more condensed. With a bang, his whole body fiercely collided with the sword light. Rumble! A terrifying explosion of energy spread out from the incomparably huge arena, causing the entire martial arts practice field to tremble violently. Some of the spectators with low cultivations actually jumped out of their seats in fright, screaming in fear. The might of the black tortoise, is it something that you can resist? Die. When they saw the scene on the arena again, what shocked everyone was that Liu Ran actually broke through the layers of sword light. Accompanied by a cold and arrogant voice, he threw out a punch. The veins on Wang Yi's face twitched, and he suddenly let out a roar. He gathered all of his cultivation and stabbed out with his sword. Clang! Rumble! The tip of the sword and the fist collided, and there was a burst of dazzling sparks and the sound of metal clashing. With a loud explosion, Wang Yi, who originally thought that he would win, was directly sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Although he was endlessly unwilling, when he sensed Liu Ran's rapidly approaching figure, he did not dare to have any hesitation. He fearfully shouted, "I admit defeat." As expected of the divine beast black tortoise, its defensive ability is actually so strong. The elders on the rostrum all exclaimed in admiration. However, the entire arena was in a state of shock. They were still immersed in the shock brought by Liu Ran. He hasn't even completed the first step of fusion, and he's still a 9th grade martial great master. He's no match for me. On the contestants' seating area, a youth restrained his aura. He had a relaxed expression on his face as he stared at Liu Ran, who was flying towards the contestants' seating area. Don't be careless. The black tortoise's defense is the strongest among us. He hasn't completed the first step of fusion. Who knows if he'll have completed it when we meet. Moreover, he'll also borrow the energy from the fusion to break through to the martial saint realm? So what? I'm not just a martial saint. I'm a martial saint who has comprehended the operation of the 5 elements. What's more, my ranking is much higher than his by a large margin. Don't worry, when I easily destroy that worthless inheritance, you'll know how strong I am. The youth confidently said to the divine beast azure dragon in his body. As he spoke, his gaze was filled with provocation and disdain as he looked at Chen Hao, who was not far away. However, Chen Hao's gaze was only fixed on Liu Ran, who had just walked down from the arena. He did not seem to care about the gaze that was looking at him. In the past 2 days, Chen Hao had already gotten used to being stared at by others, even though he was only the 10th and last seated contestant. However, he and Lung Yihan were the most eye-catching existences. Before the experiential training, they were both only rank 8 martial emperors. However, at this moment, they had obtained the qualifications to become seated contestants among over 3,000 disciples. The only gaze that Chen Hao cared about was one of them. It was a sinister gaze that had practically never left him after he appeared. That gaze was very powerful. It was so powerful that just by looking at it, Chen Hao felt that it was an existence that he could not resist. Chen Hao knew who it was. Even without Dongfang Ting and Xian Xian's voice transmissions, he knew who it was. It was the super genius disciple of the Imperial Sword School, Fan Fang. He was an abnormal existence who had advanced from martial great master to Golden Core realm in 2 years. The entire Imperial Sword School valued him greatly. He was a disciple whose name shook the entire cultivation world. Although Chen Hao was confident, at this moment, he was not foolish enough to confront him head-on. However, he was not afraid. He would still do what he had to do. Furthermore, he believed that even without the protection of the sect, he had an 80% chance of escaping from his opponent. Following that, the second group, the third group, and so on. The first and second group's contestants all stepped onto the arena. The strength and battle power they displayed were also powerful and brilliant. However, they could not be compared to Liu Ran, who had obtained the Divine Beast's inheritance. When the first and second group's contestants of the seventh group stepped onto the arena, the entire martial practice field exploded. Even the experts on the platform were no exception. The Divine Beast Vermilion Bird's inheritance had appeared. The young girl ranked 137th on the Black Pagoda Stele, Chu Liqin, used the power of the Divine Beast Vermilion Bird's inheritance to turn the entire main arena into a sea of flames. She burned the 47th ranked contestant half to death. If he had not admitted defeat in time, he would have lost his life. For the first match of the 10th group, number 1 Zhong Yandong and number 2 Tantai Lian, please step onto the arena. Voila! Following the referee's announcement, the entire martial practice field exploded into an uproar. Zhong Yandong was ranked 40 on the Black Pagoda Stele, while Tantai Lian was ranked 30. However, no one thought that Zhong Yandong would definitely win this match. This was because the rumor that Chen Hao and Tantai Lian had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance was the earliest to appear, and the most conclusive. The reason why it was so sensational was because Tantai Lian was also one of the most dazzling existences. She, who had been ranked last on the Black Pagoda Stele, was now ranked 30. Furthermore, she had obtained the Divine Beast's inheritance. Even though it was the most useless Phoenix's inheritance among the 6 Divine Beasts, it was still a Divine Beast's inheritance. No one dared to underestimate it. When Tantai Lian took a deep breath and stood up, Chen Hao said softly, "Victory or defeat is not important. Just be careful. I will definitely win." Hiss. Tantai Lian transformed into a stream of light and flew onto the arena. She was dressed in a long pink robe. Her aura was pure and untainted. Just like her name, she was like a blooming lotus flower. But compared to her past self, at this moment, although she was only a willing one, her entire body was filled with a powerful aura. She was no longer as weak and delicate as before. She, who had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance and refined her body with the Nirvana flame, was stronger than an ordinary 9th-grade martial grandmaster. Why are all of you so stubborn? Looking at the expression on Tantai Lian's face, Chen Hao shrugged helplessly. Beauty. Beauty is also taken. The Phoenix's inheritance requires the union of yin and yang. She is already Chen Hao's woman. I'm so envious. The two of them must have entered the same sect. They have the Phoenix's inheritance. Furthermore, one of them is a martial artist and one of them is a martial artist. Such a couple is simply a perfect match. I seem to be witnessing the birth of a pair of immortal couples. You probably don't know who Chen Hao offended, right? Fan Fong, the super genius of the Flying Sword faction. Fan Fong. Look at where the disciples of the Flying Sword faction are. It is said that Chen Hao killed Fan Fong's most beloved sister during his training. Immortal couples. I'm afraid it will be difficult. Fan Fong has only entered the sect for 2 years, and is already an inner disciple. Furthermore, he has the battle power to challenge core disciples. Such a super genius, the inheritance of a divine beast, is really nothing. The buzzing of discussion came from the martial arts practice field. Obviously, there was no such thing as an airtight wall. The conflict between Chen Hao and Fan Fong had already spread. The others only treated it as a topic of conversation. However, Chen Hao's ears twitched. When he heard these words, his handsome face revealed an incomparable struggle. Who the hell said that the Phoenix's inheritance requires the union of yin and yang? Isn't this ruining little Lian's reputation? Friends who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Continue to write the second update. Chapter 184. Note. Brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Damn it. Chen Hao couldn't help but curse in a low voice. What's wrong? Li Yifeng immediately asked. Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain also looked at Chen Hao. After 6 months of being together, the three of them understood Chen Hao quite well. No matter what he encountered, he was calm, experienced, and wise. They couldn't compare to him at all. It was as if even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, he could still remain calm and composed. But why was he cursing at this time? Chen Hao frowned slightly as he looked at the three of them. He seemed to be very conflicted. When the three of them were a little scared, he finally asked, do you also think that after receiving the Phoenix's legacy, little Lian and I have already intercourse? Cough cough. Li Yifeng and the other two immediately coughed twice. Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain immediately turned their heads. Li Yifeng, who was next to Chen Hao, couldn't avoid it in time. He could only look at Chen Hao and say, although we didn't receive the Phoenix's legacy, but the records of the Divine Beast's legacies still say it very clearly. Could it be that you and little Lian haven't done it? Damn it. Of course not. Chen Hao shook off Li Yifeng's arm and couldn't help but curse again. He said gloomily. Obviously, even Li Yifeng and the other two thought that Chen Hao and Tantai Lian had already intercourse. It was also because of this that the three of them didn't interrupt the subtle relationship between Tantai Lian and Chen Hao during this period of time. This was because they truly couldn't sense any desire to possess Tantai Lian from Chen Hao. In fact, it was no different from when he hadn't obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. They couldn't understand, so they didn't interfere. Boom boom boom. The terrifying explosions in the arena and the cries of surprise from the audience made Chen Hao temporarily put down the gloominess in his heart and look at Tantai Lian, who had already started fighting. Zhong Yandong was very cautious, but he was completely suppressed by Tantai Lian. Tantai Lian was very wild. Her powerful mental strength fused with the majestic and terrifying pure yang energy. Under her control, it transformed into terrifying sword beams. Furthermore, under her powerful control, it sealed off any possibility of Zhong Yandong dodging or fighting. She floated in the air, her eyes were sharp and her face was cold. As she attacked, she approached Zhong Yandong at a steady pace, but it was filled with menace. She had not even unleashed the power of the Phoenix's inheritance, but she had already gained the absolute advantage. This was what was truly shocking. When Tantai Lian was only 30 meters away from Zhong Yandong was forced to admit defeat due to Tantai Lian's terrifying strength. This was because he really could not be sure if he would be able to survive when the other party unleashed the power of the inheritance. Under countless gazes and exclamations, Tantai Lian flew back to Chen Hao and sat down in silence. She saw Chen Hao's straight and somewhat strange gaze, but she had no choice but to avoid it. Ever since that night, she tried her best not to look or think about it. This was because she was afraid that she would lose even her most basic dignity and modesty. She was afraid that she would fall into those deep black eyes. Chen Hao wanted to say something, but he realized that he was not good with words, especially when facing a woman. At this moment, he was even more speechless. What should he say? Of course Chen Hao knew, and so did Tantai Lian. Everyone else thought that the two of them had intercourse. Although the two of them really did not. For a girl, this kind of thing was too hurtful. Tantai Lian? I, Fanfong, will let you die a good death. I will let Chen Hao watch as you die. From afar, Fanfong's vicious eyes flashed with a strange and evil light. He stared at Tantai Lian, who had flown back to the contestant seating area, and thought to himself. When he saw the scene of Fan Yin's death in the Seal of Life and Death, Chen Hao was the main culprit who killed Fan Yin, and Tantai Lian was an accomplice. Chen Hao had to die, and so did Tantai Lian. However, staring at Tantai Lian's beautiful figure, Fan Fong, who had already lost his beloved sister, had a twisted mind that could better vent the hatred in his heart. I will let you die a good death, a good death. Under the extreme perverted excitement, Fan Fong's face flashed with an evil aura, and he could not help but murmur to himself. Xian, who was next to Fan Fong, was shocked. She frowned deeply, and her eyes imperceptibly looked at Dongfang Ting, who was closer to her. Soon, it was time for the third and fourth contestants of each group to take the stage. In these 10 matches, no more inherited divine beasts appeared. There were 2 matches that were the most outstanding. One was Lung Yihan of Group 3. He, who was ranked 3rd on the Pagoda Monument, killed the disciple ranked 43rd in one move. This was the only battle after the top 20 where he killed an opponent. Chen Hao was shocked to the core, especially the style of Lung Yihan's sword. It was really breathtaking. Moreover, What shocked Chen Hao even more was that the aura that this guy released in an instant had actually advanced to 9th grade martial ancestor. When Lung Yihan had talked to Chen Hao, he had casually said that he wanted to break through a little. At that time, Chen Hao had not thought much of it, thinking that Lung Yihan must have reached the peak of 6th grade martial ancestor and could break through the barrier at any time. That was why he had said that. However, in less than 2 days, the little he said had actually advanced by 3 grades. This was simply inconceivable. What a monstrous existence. At least, Chen Hao did not think that he could do it. Even if he did not have any barriers, how could he advance by 3 grades in 2 days if he started to crazily refine his origin energy? Other than Lung Yihan, which shocked Chen Hao, there was another battle that made Chen Hao feel a trace of threat. In fact, not only did Chen Hao feel threatened, but all the disciples in the top 10 felt a huge threat, especially those who were sure that they would be able to advance. Even more so, Group 10 Number 4 Kong Linghong. Kong Linghong, ranked 20th on the Black Pagoda Monument, was ranked 2nd in Chen Hao's group, second only to Chen Hao. He, who had drawn number 4, had decisively surrendered the moment he appeared on the stage. The 7-colored light shrouded him, dazzling him. That was the symbol of stepping into the martial saint realm. Who dared to fight him? Just based on the realm alone, Kong Linghong had directly risen to the level of the most powerful contender for the championship. Moreover, some people had vaguely guessed something. Although Kong Linghong did not reveal any aura of the divine beast inheritance, the dragon roar that came from the mountain last night made the cultivators who lived near the mountain and knew that Kong Linghong and the others lived on the mountain suspect that Kong Linghong was the one who inherited the divine beast Azure Dragon. Kong Linghong, who had a complacent, arrogant and proud expression, flew slowly in the air as he returned to the contestants' seating area, enjoying the glory of being the center of attention. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he looked provocatively at Chen Hao and Tan Tai Lien, who were sitting together, before returning to his seat. Martial Saint. Tan Tai Lien frowned deeply, and could not help but look at Chen Hao. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianpain also looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao did not look at the 4 of them. Instead, he stared in the direction of the arena with a cold expression. Chen Hao, did you hear the discussion of those disciples over there? This Kong Linghong is very likely the one who inherited the divine beast Azure Dragon. Otherwise, how could he, who was originally a 9th grade martial ancestor, become a martial saint so quickly? He must have used the power of the inheritance to break through. Look at his complacent expression. It's obvious that he doesn't take you seriously. Li Yifeng said. Martial ancestor and martial saint are only one step apart, but they are the acquired realm and the connate realm. This gap is not something a martial emperor and martial ancestor can compare to. Chen Hao, as a brother, whether you want to hear it or not, I Yang Fan still have to say it. It's not that easy to be in the top 3. Furthermore, Fan Fong wants to kill you. Without the protection of a sect, I really don't know how you can escape. If it's possible, choose a sect. Let's all choose a sect. If you and Little Lien work together, you can also unleash the power of the Phoenix's inheritance. As long as you stay in the sect for a few years, I believe that no matter how talented Fan Fong is, he won't be able to threaten you. I think so too, Ni Jianpain also said. Tan Tai Lien did not speak, but she looked at Chen Hao. Without a doubt, this was what she had been looking forward to the most. However, because of the girl that Chen Hao had mentioned, she had forcibly suppressed this anticipation. We'll see. Chen Hao took a deep breath and said ambiguously. One only needed to imagine the power of the Azure Dragon's inheritance when he and Tan Tai Lien worked together to make a guess. Furthermore, although he had not truly merged his yin and yang with Tan Tai Lien, he had completed the first step of merging. As for the second step, he had never thought of completing it. Furthermore, even if he completed it with the help of the mysterious existence in his mind, so what? Without the true merging of yin and yang, the Phoenix's inheritance was of little value. It could not be merged into one body. Furthermore, he had never thought of using the Phoenix's inheritance to rush into the top 3. Looking at Chen Hao's sharp and determined gaze, Tan Tai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other 3 knew that their persuasion had no effect. Amidst the shock and discussion of the crowd, The duel between number 5 and number 6 began again. Number 6 in the first group, Gao Jianfei, his opponent admitted defeat and won. Number 5 in the second group, Lu Feiyu, who was ranked 12th on the Black Pagoda tablet, displayed a powerful combat strength and defeated his opponent ranked 22nd in a minute. Number 5 and 6 in the third group had mediocre performances. Number 6 won. When it came to the fourth group, the highly anticipated Divine Beast's inheritance appeared again. This made the low-level disciples who participated in the Xinwu ruins experience very depressed. Up until now, no one had heard of any sect disciple obtaining the Divine Beast's inheritance during the experience. Now, the Divine Beast Qilan's inheritance appeared again. The expert ranked 34th on the Black Pagoda tablet, number 5 in the fourth group, Ao Huaguang. His tower-like majestic body caused a commotion the moment he appeared. His bulging muscles were like those of an ancient ferocious beast that contained a terrifying and explosive power. Around him, the enormous and majestic body of the Qilan god beast was faintly flashing. This aura made the expert ranked 14th on the Black Pagoda tablet, who was full of confidence, choose to admit defeat unwillingly. The combat strength between 14 and 34 was equal. How could he defeat the lucky one who obtained the Divine Beast's inheritance? Requesting monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. Continue to add the third update. Chapter 185. Third update, looking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 180. Decision, Awakening Group 10 Number 7 Morongbai and Number 8 Chenhao, please come on stage. The referee's voice sounded, and Chenhao immediately flew to the arena. From the fourth group's fifth contestant, Ao Huaguang, to the fifth and sixth contestants, and then from the first group's seventh and eighth contestants, all the way to the 10th group's Morongbai and Chenhao's contestants, there were no exciting performances. Only a few seeded contestants showed their powerful strength. The Divine Beast White Tiger's inheritance that everyone was looking forward to had not appeared yet. It was the only Divine Beast inheritance that had not appeared yet. Morongbai was ranked 110 on the Black Pagoda. Facing Chenhao, a seeded contestant who had obtained the Phoenix inheritance, plus the rumors about Chenhao, he did not have the courage to enter the arena and chose to admit defeat. Chenhao ran back and forth in despair. He could only sigh that his opponents were too weak. Until now, he and the other three seeded contestants still had not had a chance to fight. The competition continued. In Group 3, number 9 Yongfan, although he had comprehended the essence of wind, he was still seriously injured by number 10 Zheng Yuanpeng, a 9th grade martial grandmaster who was ranked 13 on the Black Pagoda. Yongfan's surprise attack was absolutely terrifying, but the confident Zheng Yuanpeng used his great strength to counterattack when Yongfan's sword was about to reach him. When it was time for number 9 and 10 of Group 5 to enter the arena, number 10 contestant Yu Qiyu, a female disciple with an enchanting appearance and a seductive figure, did not show great strength at the beginning. However, when she was completely suppressed by her opponent, and was about to be defeated, her aura suddenly soared crazily. The Divine Beast White Tiger inheritance had finally appeared. She killed her shocking opponent in one move. In one day, after 2 rounds of competition, Chenhao still did not have a chance to fight. However, the real strong contestants had already shown their talents. The most outstanding contestant was undoubtedly Kong Linghong, who was a martial saint in Group 10, and had a high chance of obtaining the Azure Dragon inheritance. Then there was Li Yuran in Group 1 with the Black Tortoise inheritance, Ao Huaguang in Group 4 with the Kailan inheritance, Yu Qiyu in Group 5 with the White Tiger inheritance, and Chu Laqin in Group 7 with the Vermilion Bird inheritance. In addition to these 5 contestants who had revealed the Divine Beast inheritance, there were also several powerful contestants who entered the public's eyes. Chenhao. Just as Chenhao and the rest stepped out of the training ground, Dongfang Ting's figure appeared beside Chenhao and said, "Let me join you tonight. Senior sister, is coming with us?" Chenhao asked in surprise. "It's a sect mission. I was sent here as a lobbyist to deal with the elders. You don't have to worry about it. Water flows downwards and people walk upwards. I will not affect you," Dongfang Ting said with a faint smile. Although there was nothing wrong with her expression, there was a hint of worry hidden deep within her eyes. That was especially true when she looked at Chen Hao and Tantai Lian. Chen Hao's intuition told him that Dong Fangting was not simply here to persuade the elders. In less than 10 minutes, Chen Hao and the other four, led by Dong Fangting, returned to the courtyard on the peak. As expected, after entering the courtyard, Dong Fangting called for Chen Hao and the rest to enter the cultivation room together. "Senior sister, what's the matter?" Chen Hao asked with a frown after entering the cultivation room. "During the competition, I received a message from Xian Xian. She asked me to ask about the specific situation when you killed Fan Fang's sister." "The specific situation? I just killed her with a punch. What's wrong?" "Not that. Fan Fang had formed the seal of life and death with his sister. When she dies, Fan Fang can see the scene of his sister's death through the seal of life and death. Xian Xian said that Fan Fang said today that he wanted all of you to die, and it's very likely that he would do something even worse to Xiaolian. And according to what Tai Zigong said, Fan Fang might not let any of you off." Tantai Lian, Li Yifeng, Yongfan, and Enai Jianpain's expressions changed slightly as they looked at Chen Hao. Then Tantai Lian said, "I'm not afraid. At most, I'll cultivate in the sect. No matter how strong he is, would he dare to attack the sect? It's just that." Tantai Lian looked at Chen Hao and did not continue. Yang Fan and the other two did the same. Chen Hao's brows were deeply furrowed. His black eyes were unusually cold. He did not speak, as if he was deep in thought. "His target is the Dragon Transformation list." Tantai Lian could not help but send a message to Dong Fangting. "What?" Dong Fangting's eyes widened in shock. She grabbed Chen Hao and said, "What are you thinking? Without the sect's protection, with Fan Fang's cultivation, how could you hide? If I'm not wrong, he has already locked onto your aura. Fan Fang may be in the golden core stage, but he can even form the seal of life and death. Do you know what this means? If you insist on doing things your own way, you'll only get yourself killed. The only way is to choose a sect and concentrate on cultivation. When you've truly grown and are strong enough to fight him, you won't have to hide anymore. Can't you even tolerate this?" Chen Hao looked at Dong Fangting in shock. Ever since they met, Dong Fangting had never lost her temper. But now, the Dragon Transformation list is indeed of a higher level than the 100 Empire ranking. But don't think that your talent is so great that you can stand out on the Dragon Transformation list. Those disciples are all super geniuses from big clans in the cultivation world. If you don't join a sect now, you're like a wandering cultivator without roots. Your cultivation conditions are 100 times worse than those of sect disciples, and you're suppressed everywhere. How fast can you improve? In 2 years, even if you're lucky enough to escape Fan Fang's pursuit, how much can you improve? 6th grade Martial Saint is the minimum requirement to register for the Dragon Transformation list. There are plenty of martial gods, and Golden Core stage is not rare. These are all geniuses below the age of 20. Disciples from our dynasty can't compare to them at all. I don't know why you insist on participating in the Dragon Transformation list, but this time, you must. I'll listen to you." Chen Hao suddenly said, "Senior sister, can you let go of my shoulder? If you continue to hold on, my bones will be crushed by your grip." Dong Fangting was slightly taken aback by Chen Hao's words. She immediately released Chen Hao's shoulder and asked, "Are you serious?" Tantai Lian Yongfan and the other three looked at Chen Hao in shock. They immediately heaved a sigh of relief. This was a bull, a stubborn guy to the point of madness. Although Tantai Lian couldn't help but tell Dong Fangting, the four of them didn't have much hope. But now, Chen Hao had actually agreed. "Really? Senior sister, does your sect have the strength to protect us?" "Our sect? Yes," Chen Hao said with a serious expression. "Our sect is only of 3rd grade. It doesn't matter what grade you are. I only want to know if your sect has the ability to let us stay in the sect. That's not a problem. Even if it's a 1st grade sect, as long as you're in the sect, no one would dare to do anything to you. Even the sect leader of the Flying Sword sect doesn't have this ability. But we're only of 3rd grade. Chen Hao, you don't have to worry about your relationship with me. My sword will let you choose the 7th grade sect. The Myriad Pill Pavilion. Hearing Dongfang Ting's words, Tantai Lian and the other three looked at Chen Hao. Their expressions were obviously more inclined towards the Myriad Pill Pavilion that Dongfang Ting had mentioned. I'd rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix, Chen Hao said with a slight smile. Then why do you insist on participating in the dragon transformation list? Dongfang Ting couldn't help but ask. For one thing, it's to vent my anger. Secondly, I never wanted to join any sect. I want to be a freelance cultivator. A freelance cultivator with no restrictions. Chen Hao said. A freelance cultivator? Are you crazy? A freelance cultivator can't even obtain a decent cultivation technique. What are you cultivating? This. I don't think it's very important. Chen Hao seemed to say reluctantly. In the eyes of Dongfang Ting, Tantai Lian, and the other four, he seemed to have completely ignored them. In reality, what they didn't know was that the reason Chen Hao wanted to be a freelance cultivator without any restrictions was because of the secrets of the Taoist canon in his mind. Once he stepped into the golden elixir stage, he would truly begin his own cultivation. How would he lack cultivation techniques? He believed that combining Taoist techniques and martial arts techniques would allow his strength to increase rapidly. Besides this, there was another reason that attracted Chen Hao to be a freelance cultivator. That was because he didn't have to shoulder any responsibilities or concerns. But this time, the news that Dongfang Ting brought, and the words that she had just said made Chen Hao understand that it was impossible for people to be free of responsibilities. In the past, he was able to do that because, strictly speaking, he was a person who had completely sealed himself off and refused to accept anyone. Could the current him do that? No. But now it seems impossible. Alright, senior sister, I'll choose your Zhaixing sect. What about you? If you think my level is too low, you're free to. Chen Hao suddenly seemed to become a different person as he looked at Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, and the other three. Although he said they were free to choose, the expression on his face clearly said that if they dared to do as they pleased, he would cut ties with them. So what if I'm third level? Didn't you say that? The level isn't important. What's important is whether it suits me. I've long felt that the Zhaixing sect suits me. Of course, I'm fine with it. That's what I thought too. Yang Fan said with a smile on his ordinary face. You've spoken my mind. And I Jian Pain, who was as solemn as a mountain, actually grinned and said. Tantai Lian only nodded, her face slightly red. This. Dongfang Ting was a little surprised and didn't know what to say. The so-called lobbyist was indeed real. Elder Wu meant for her to fight for Li Yifeng and Anai Jian Pain, the two weakest. As for Yang Fan, who had rushed into the top 10, there was no hope. Not to mention Chen Hao and Tantai Lian. But at this moment, they seemed to have won 6 at once. How great was this credit? But, you're really choosing the Zhaixing sect? Are you sure you're not being impulsive? I'm sure. Senior sister, look at how happy you are. Is the reward very great? Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, and the other three were once again surprised that Chen Hao actually joked. Very great. If it's true, it's really great. Then remember to share some benefits with us. Don't doubt whether it's true or not. The Zhaixing sect, what a domineering name. I didn't think much of it at first, but the more I think about it, the more it fits, Chen Hao said with a smile. At this moment, Tantai Lian and the other three suddenly wondered if the person in front of them was the original Chen Hao. Yes and no. Even Chen Hao himself didn't expect that after making this decision, his entire soul seemed to have undergone a baptism, as if the dark clouds had parted to reveal the sun and moon. He made this decision for the sake of Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Anai Jian Pain. This also made him understand that the determination in his heart, the strong desire to become stronger, had sunk into the obsession of his former self. But unfortunately, he was no longer the person he used to be, and he couldn't be heartless at all. Fortunately, he chose to join a sect for the sake of the four of them. Even more fortunately, after making this choice, he understood that he had sunk into obsession. But now he was clear-headed, begging for monthly votes. Chapter 186. 2 days later. The competition for the top 10 had been going on for 3 days. Every contestant had completed 6 matches. Among the groups with Divine Beasts inheritances, other than the 10th-seeded contestant, Chen Hao, who had yet to meet the martial sage, Kong Linghong, who had obtained the Azure Dragon's inheritance, the other 4 groups had all fought against the seeded contestants. In the first group, Liu Ran, who had obtained the Black Tortoise's inheritance, met the first-ranked Gao Jianfei. To everyone's surprise, they ended in a draw. In the 4th group, Ao Huaguang, who had obtained the Kailan's inheritance, defeated the seeded contestant, Yuan Hao. In the 5th group, Yu Qiyu, who had obtained the White Tiger's inheritance, defeated the seeded contestant, Ren Yujiang. In the 7th group, Chu Liqin, who had obtained the Vermilion Bird's inheritance, defeated the seeded contestant, Xianyuan Hong. Other than Liu Ran, Ao Huaguang, Yu Qiyu, and Chu Liqin had all advanced to the martial sage realm so far, for martial sages had appeared in the 100 Empire ranking. Furthermore, everyone knew that the 5th martial sage would be born very soon. That was Liu Ran. It was obvious that Liu Ran had not completed the first step of merging with the Black Tortoise. Otherwise, he would have advanced to the martial sage realm like the other 4. As for Chen Hao and Tantai Lian, who had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance, no one could be sure. After all, compared to the 5 divine beasts, the Phoenix was of little value. Tantai Lian, who had also obtained the Phoenix's inheritance, had already admitted defeat when she met Kong Linghong. Today, the most anticipated match was between Chen Hao and Kong Linghong. In the 10th group, number 4 Kong Linghong and number 8 Chen Hao, please enter the stage. Crash. Following the referee's announcement, the highly anticipated match was finally about to begin. Instantly, everyone looked at Chen Hao. Yes, they were looking at Chen Hao, because no one could be sure whether Chen Hao would fight or not. Whoosh. Chen Hao did not give the crowd too much time to wait. When Kong Linghong flew into the arena, he turned into a ray of light and landed on the arena. Lung Yihan, who had always been lazy, suddenly twitched his mouth. A small dimple appeared on his face. Dongfang Ting, Tantai Lian, and the rest were slightly nervous. Even Xian Xian was no exception. Fan Fong was also a little nervous, but he wasn't nervous about the outcome of the battle between Chen Hao and Kong Linghong. Instead, he was worried that Chen Hao would die at the hands of Kong Linghong. That would be too easy for Chen Hao. On the huge arena, Chen Hao's figure was as straight as a sword. Facing Kong Linghong, whose body was faintly flashing with 7-colored light, his face was calm, and no emotions could be seen at all. Only a pair of deep black eyes were shining faintly. I've finally encountered a battle that makes me somewhat excited. Chen Hao, come, I'll let you experience the power of a martial saint. When the referee announced the start of the match, Kong Linghong unhurriedly activated his 7-colored protective aura, and said lightly. His expression was lazy and his tone was arrogant. It was obvious that he didn't see Chen Hao as an opponent. Especially when it was said out loud. Only the strength of a martial saint? I advise you to use the power of the Azure Dragon inheritance, or you'll die a miserable death. Chen Hao's expression was still calm. His clear, but even more arrogant voice was transmitted to everyone's ears. At this moment, Chen Hao's aura suddenly soared. His body actually began to shine with a faint 7-colored light, circulating the 5 elements, and the aura of yin and yang of heaven and earth, instantly spreading out. Bang! What shocked Lung Yihan, Dongfang Ting, Tantai Lian, and all those familiar with Chen Hao was that at this moment, Chen Hao actually made his move, brazenly charging at his opponent and attacking. How could this be? Didn't he know how to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses? This guy, what is he doing? Lung Yihan frowned. Even if Lung Yihan wanted to fight, he wouldn't dare to choose this method because of the difference in cultivation level, and the difference in inherited divine beasts. Only by integrating with all things in the world, and relying on the power of the wind attribute's true essence would Chen Hao have a better chance of winning. What was the difference between fighting head-on like this and seeking death? You're not qualified. I'd like to see who will die miserably. Before everyone's gazes, Kong Linghong stared at Chen Hao, who was rushing over like lightning. He was not in a hurry, and as he spoke his body moved. Enveloped by the 7-colored light, he rose into the air. His expression became cold and disdainful, emitting a strong bone-chilling killing intent. It was true killing intent. In reality, Kong Linghong had never looked down on Chen Hao. Even though he was confident that he could easily defeat Chen Hao, he did not dare to look down on him. Chen Hao was only a rank 8 martial emperor before he started his training. In a short 9 months, he was able to distinguish himself among the geniuses of the 100 Empire ranking and stand on the highest stage as a seed. Who would dare to look down on him? Furthermore, Kong Linghong was certain that the sect's elders wanted Chen Hao much more than the disciples who obtained the inheritance of divine beasts and became martial saints. That was because Chen Hao's age, talent, battle power, and the aura of the 5 elements and yin and yang of heaven and earth on his body were not something that the inherited divine beasts could compare with. With an additional competitor, there would be a decrease in importance. Especially if they both chose the same sect, his radiance would be somewhat overshadowed by Chen Hao. Thus, as long as Chen Hao dared to accept his challenge, he would think of a way to kill him. Directly revealing the power of inheritance was clearly not suitable. Otherwise, if he were to directly admit defeat, the gains would not make up for the losses. Furthermore, he believed that merely by relying on the disparity between a martial saint and a martial ancestor realm, he would be able to kill Chen Hao. Boom! After Kong Linghong spat out the word miserable, a resplendent 7-colored pillar of energy suddenly condensed in his palm. Frightening energy fluctuations immediately spread out. In an instant, they condensed into a resplendent pillar of energy that ruthlessly shot toward the incoming Chen Hao. Kong Linghong's frightening attack was as fast as lightning. Merely the energy fluctuations it emitted were sufficient to explode any martial ancestor realm expert. As soon as he attacked, Kong Linghong displayed the true power of a martial saint. Countless people in the spectator seats were shocked. With such power, how could Chen Hao, who was only at the martial ancestor realm, resist? Everyone's gazes were filled with shock, curiosity, and pity as they gathered on Chen Hao. No one had thought that Chen Hao would stupidly choose such a head-on attack. However, in the face of Kong Linghong's swift and fierce attack, Chen Hao's expression did not change in the slightest. He did not have any intention of dodging. His wildly dashing figure suddenly froze. His right palm drew an arc in front of him at lightning speed and crossed his waist. Then, he exploded with a loud roar that reverberated through the heavens and earth as he violently struck out with his palm. Roar, roar, roar. The moment Chen Hao's palm struck out, the violent yuan power within a radius of several hundred feet instantly seemed to have been sucked away. What was even more shocking was that in an instant, Chen Hao's palm actually spat out a total of 18 energy shadows that resembled divine dragons. They spiraled and danced as they whizzed out. The whizzing sound was like the roars of 18 huge dragons exploding at the same time. The momentum was extremely shocking. Rumble. Chen Hao's palm landed solidly on the oncoming light pillar. In an instant, accompanied by a frightening explosion, a strong wind that could collapse mountains and split the earth frantically swept out. The huge main arena and even the entire martial arts practice field trembled at this moment. Break. 18 huge dragons that contain the circulation of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth seemed to have condensed into substance. They coiled around the energy light pillar that Chen Hao had sent out and extended upwards. Then, with a low roar from Chen Hao, the energy light pillar that was enough to kill a 9th-grade martial ancestor realm was actually forcefully exploded by Chen Hao's palm under the shocked gazes of the crowd. Who exactly obtained the inheritance of the Azure Dragon? In the martial arts practice field, countless people were dumbfounded and at a loss. Chen Hao, who was only a 9th-grade martial ancestor realm, was actually not at a disadvantage in his first direct confrontation. He had sent out 18 huge dragons with a palm strike. The frightening strength that he displayed caused countless people to feel that it was inconceivable. Even the eyes of the sect elders on the platform became heated. What kind of absolute skill was this? Are you qualified now? After the frightening energy storm, Chen Hao's proud and upright figure once again clearly appeared in front of the crowd. He stared at Kong Linghong, who was 100 feet away, and said with a cold and arrogant voice. Kong Linghong's pupils slowly shrank. A bone-chilling voice suddenly rang out. Since you're looking for death, I'll fulfill your wish. A strong killing intent spread out from Kong Linghong's body. The temperature of the martial arts practice field seemed to have instantly dropped to the freezing point. At this moment, everyone could see that Kong Linghong no longer dared to underestimate Chen Hao. A sparkling and resplendent green light accompanied by a strong killing intent flashed out from Kong Linghong's body at a frightening speed. Roar! At this moment, a dragon's roar resounded through the heavens and the earth. Above Kong Linghong's head, the phantom of a huge azure dragon that was dozens of feet long appeared. It circled around like lightning and directly merged into Kong Linghong's body. Kacha-kacha, accompanied by a strange sound. An extremely frightening aura suddenly soared from Kong Linghong's body. What shocked the crowd even more was that Kong Linghong's exposed skin was covered with green scales that emitted a crystal light at a frightening speed. His hands were also strangely enlarged by several times, as if they had become incomparably sharp dragon claws. Before he made a move, the crowd could clearly feel that Kong Linghong's body contained an explosive energy that was enough to shatter mountains and split the earth. Is this the true strength of the divine beast inheritance? Countless people looked at Kong Linghong in a daze and muttered. In the previous battles, other than Li Yuran who had admitted defeat, the other three who had obtained the divine beast inheritance had already stepped into the martial saint realm. Even when they faced the seeded contestants, they did not merge with the divine beast inheritance. As martial saints, they had easily won. At this moment, under the might of Chen Hao's palm, Kong Linghong had no choice but to display his true strength. Go to hell. Kong Linghong, who had turned into a monster covered in scales, had eyes like an ancient ferocious beast, emitting a monstrous killing intent. His body shook and suddenly, with a whoosh, his entire person seemed to have turned into a divine dragon that soared through the 9 heavens. The energy of heaven and earth churned violently as a violent and powerful aura swept through the entire incomparably huge arena. Chapter 187. What a powerful aura! Is this the true power of the divine beast inheritance? In the martial arts arena, countless cultivators stared at Kong Linghong, who seemed to have transformed into an azure dragon. They were extremely shocked, especially the disciples who still had to fight. When they felt the terrifying aura, they might not even be able to move, let alone fight. How could Chen Hao, whose aura was clearly much weaker, resist? In everyone's opinion, Chen Hao was courting death by forcing Kong Linghong to this extent. Chen Hao stared at Kong Linghong, whose aura reached the heavens, and his pupils abruptly shrank. He could feel that Kong Linghong's aura was at least 3 times more terrifying than before. It was not something that a simple first-grade martial saint could compare to. Even a 3rd-grade or 4th-grade martial saint would not have any chance of survival if they met Kong Linghong. It was indeed very troublesome. The power of the Azure Dragon inheritance is indeed terrifying. A trace of seriousness flashed through Chen Hao's cold expression. Azure Dragon Sky-Shattering Claw. A terrifying aura engulfed the heavens and earth. Kong Linghong's eyes were cold. He did not give Chen Hao too much time to think. His mutated hand stretched forward. A dragon claw that was 100 feet long directly formed above Chen Hao and slammed down. The tyrannical aura contained an incomparably terrifying energy. It was suffocating. Perhaps in the next instant, Chen Hao's thin body would be torn apart by the dragon claw. Seeing that the dragon claw had completely enveloped Chen Hao, Kong Linghong's killing intent surged. His 5 fingers suddenly grabbed at the air. The seemingly solid dragon claw suddenly grabbed at Chen Hao, who was completely enveloped. Boom, boom, boom. The entire arena exploded around Chen Hao. 5 huge cracks appeared on the incomparably hard ground, closing in on Chen Hao from the outside. Such a terrifying destructive power caused countless people to be dumbfounded. In your dreams, Chen Hao suddenly raised his head and felt the dragon claws that were like mountains converging towards him from all directions, and he coldly spat out 2 words. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground, and with a bang, his entire body actually rose up from the ground before smashing out with his fist. 100 steps divine fist break. Chen Hao let out a deep roar from his dantian. In an instant, the powerful fused energy was condensed to the extreme, causing Chen Hao's small body to suddenly shrink. An extremely condensed and terrifying aura rushed out from Chen Hao's fist like a meteor. Bang! Rumble! At that moment, Chen Hao's figure was completely surrounded by the dragon's claws. No one could see him. They could only hear Chen Hao's deep and angry roar. However, other than the true experts and Tantai Lian, and the others who had absolute confidence in Chen Hao, almost everyone thought that Chen Hao would be destroyed by Kong Linghong's claw. No matter how strong a 9th-level martial grandmaster was, how strong could he be? How high could his battle prowess be? Under the encirclement of absolute power, no one could resist. However, following Chen Hao's roar, suddenly, a small fist shadow that could be ignored directly penetrated the core of the giant claw with a rumbling explosion. With an amazing speed, it directly blasted towards Kong Linghong, who was in the air. Such a small fist shadow actually broke through Kong Linghong's mountain-like dragon claw and directly penetrated it. What a condensed fist technique. It's clearly almost solid. At that moment, the experts on the rostrum all widened their eyes in shock. How could a 9th-level martial grandmaster be so strong? Lung Yihan, Meng Yi Gao Jianfei, and the few disciples who had obtained the inheritance of the mythical beast and had the strength to compete for the championship all looked extremely shocked. Whoosh! Chen Hao did not give the crowd time to be shocked. The power of the 100 Steps Divine Fist, a unique skill of the martial arts world, under the stimulation of his own integrated energy, did not disappoint him. After breaking through the center of his opponent's terrifying dragon claw with one punch, it directly rushed out of the encirclement of the dragon claw like a cannonball and brazenly approached Kong Linghong, who had a shocked expression, and scattered the remaining power of Chen Hao's punch. After a brief moment of shock, Kong Linghong's eyes flashed with a touch of anger. He snorted coldly and did not retreat at all. He took a step forward and, covered in scales, brazenly faced the attack. Bang! 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 Dense and muffled sounds of close combat immediately erupted on the stage. A human and a beast-like figure crisscrossed each other. Tens of thousands of fist shadows and claw shadows overlapped each other. The low and deep sounds of collisions did not seem like much at first. However, the area where the two figures passed by immediately exploded like thunder. Wave after wave of frightening energy storms caused the hearts of countless people to tremble in fear. Under the gazes of countless people, the two of them had already exchanged hundreds and thousands of blows in a short period of time. Chen Hao's slightly thin and small figure, in front of his opponent's monster-like figure, was actually not at a disadvantage at all. This scene not only shocked the audience in the martial arts practice field, but also the eyes of the elders on the rostrum. Their expressions were shocked. Just how strong was this Chen Hao's fleshly body? Especially at this moment, Chen Hao did not use the power of the Phoenix inheritance at all. He was completely relying on his own strength. This Chen Hao is actually so strong. This is too inconceivable. He still hasn't used the power of the Phoenix inheritance. Although it's of little value, what kind of concept would it be if he were to use it? He is only a rank 9 martial ancestor. To be able to reach the position of a seated participant as a rank 8 martial emperor, it's not strange for him to possess such battle power. The audience was dazzled by the battle. They were unable to see the movements of the two people at all. As they stared at the two figures, they began to discuss Chen Hao in shock. Dongfang Ting, Xian Xian, Tantai Lian and the others who were familiar with Chen Hao were even more shocked. Especially when they thought of how Chen Hao, in a short few years, had rapidly risen from a small county's Sesame Seed clan to the 100 Empire ranking list and obtained impressive results. They were even more shocked. Bang! Bang! Right at this moment, the two figures fell to the ground at the same time. It seemed that after an intense battle, the two of them had to take a short breather. It was only at this moment that the crowd was able to clearly see the appearance of the two people. To the shock of everyone, Chen Hao's clothes were actually completely undamaged at this moment, and his extraordinarily handsome face flickered with a piercingly cold and arrogant expression. His gaze was even fierce like a sword, and his aura was still heavy. On the other hand, Kong Linghong, who looked like a monster, did not have much of his exposed scales. However, his clothes were already in tatters, revealing many sparkling and lustrous scales. Even though Kong Linghong's aura did not weaken in the slightest, nor did he show any signs of being injured, his appearance at the very least indicated that he was already at a complete disadvantage in the previous exchange. Your physical body and strength are indeed very strong. However, you are still delusional if you want to defeat me. You can't even break through my defense. Could it be that you want to compete with me, a martial saint, in terms of aura endurance? Kong Linghong stared gloomily at Chen Hao as he spoke through gritted teeth. Chen Hao's battle strength had indeed completely exceeded his expectations. However, that was all there was to it. This was because Chen Hao's powerful attack had only torn his clothes under the protection of the dragon scales of his green dragon transformation. It had not harmed him at all. It was absolutely impossible for Chen Hao to defeat him. A martial saint's aura was prolonged. The speed at which they devoured the energy of heaven and earth was not something that a martial ancestor could compare to. He believed that as long as the battle continued, no matter how strong Chen Hao was, he would be the first to weaken. Furthermore, with his absolute defense, he was definitely in an undefeatable position. Furthermore, he had yet to use his ultimate move. This was only the group stage. His goal was to become the champion. If he used it now, he would be exposed too early. Especially when there were still 4 divine beast inheritors and martial saint experts waiting for him. Is that so? You seem to have forgotten that I have yet to use my sword. At this moment, the corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly as he spoke calmly. As he spoke, with a clang, a large sword shining with golden light appeared in his hand. The 5 elements golden sword. So what if I use my sword? Without absolute power, don't even think about breaking through my defense. Cut the crap. Take this. Hiss. Chen Hao's voice was cold as he took a step forward. He did not activate any sword light, and was still going to fight head-on. What surprised the crowd even more was that Chen Hao was clearly attacking, but his aura did not increase. Instead, it was shockingly restrained. When Lung Yihan saw this scene, his pupils shrank and his eyes widened. Is this guy crazy? Of course, Lung Yihan knew what Chen Hao was trying to do. This was because at this moment, Lung Yihan had already sensed Chen Hao's aura that had merged with all things in the world. However, this kind of attack required one to conceal oneself and launch a surprise attack when the opponent was unaware. Only then would it be effective in killing the opponent in one strike. But Chen Hao attacking head-on like this, wasn't he courting death? One had to know that merging with all things in the world and restraining one's aura meant that one had given up on one's own defense. Any random attack from the opponent could be fatal. Before Lung Yihan could recover from his shock, he suddenly realized that Chen Hao's flying figure began to drift, leaving behind a series of afterimages. He seemed to be going left, then right, then forward, then backward. He seemed to be going left, then right. He seemed to be going right, then left. What kind of movement is this? This time, it was not only Lung Yihan who widened his eyes. Countless people in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes. This kind of movement did not rely on speed. It was truly ethereal and illusory, making it impossible for people to catch a trace of it. Kong Linghong, who was in the situation, was even more impressed. This was because he could not lock onto Chen Hao's aura at all. He could not determine which direction Chen Hao would attack from and which part of his body he would attack from. Bang! Kong Linghong did not dare to think too much. This was not the time to ponder over the mysteries of the secret techniques. Although he was not afraid of Chen Hao's attack, it would be inappropriate for him to be pierced by Chen Hao's sword. Therefore, at this moment, he did not care where Chen Hao would attack. It was important for him to move first and take the initiative. But poof! What everyone did not expect, including Kong Linghong himself, was that when he moved, he directly bumped into Chen Hao's sword. What was even more unexpected was that Chen Hao's golden sword pierced through the unbelievably strong protective energy of the dragon scales like cutting through tofu. That heart-piercing cold made Kong Linghong's hair stand on end. He felt the terror of impending death. A terrified, furious, and earth-shattering scream suddenly erupted from Kong Linghong's mouth. Chapter 188. At this critical moment, the dragon scales all over Kong Linghong's body began to compress from his limbs towards his heart. Cracking sounds came from within his body as his bones and meridians underwent a strange change. At the same time, A violent energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas surged out from his body in all directions with a loud boom. Streaks of sharp rainbow-colored light turned into streaks of terrifying sword light and blasted towards Chen Hao. Bang bang bang. Kaboom. Ah! Following the terrifying explosion, Chen Hao's ethereal figure was sent flying backwards under the shocked cries of countless people. While he was still in the air, arrows of blood had already shot out from his body. Kong Linghong was also sent flying backwards. Chen Hao's golden sword was still embedded in his left chest. Chen Hao, Tantai Lian Yang Fan Li Yifeng and I Jianpain, Dong Fengting and Leng Yihan all stood up in horror and cried out. Xian Xian's face was also extremely shocked. She resisted the urge to cry out, but Fan Fong, who was beside her, smashed the hard stone table in front of him into powder with a bang. His eyes were dark and terrifying. With his high level of cultivation and amazing eyesight, he could naturally see that Chen Hao's body had been pierced by dozens of streaks of sword light. However, what surprised him was that the moment Chen Hao was pierced, his body seemed to twist strangely, and not a single one of the streaks of sword light had managed to pierce through his vitals. But with so many injuries and so much blood spurting out, even if he did not die, he would lose the ability to fight. And Kong Linghong? Kong Linghong had used his powerful green dragon transformation to forcefully deflect the sword that had pierced through his heart. Although he was also severely injured, compared to Chen Hao, he was much better off. Moreover, Kong Linghong was now under the power of the green dragon inheritance, and would definitely still have a terrifying fighting capacity. Such injuries would not affect him in the short term. What did this mean? It meant that Chen Hao would be faced with the enraged Kong Linghong, and be blasted into pieces without being able to fight back. How could Chen Hao die at the hands of others? Unfortunately, no one could stop it. Unless Chen Hao admitted defeat immediately, but at this moment, whether or not Chen Hao still had the ability to shout out the word, admit defeat, was a problem. Fan Fong's face was extremely twisted. This was definitely not what he wanted, definitely not. I want you dead. The threat of death caused Kong Linghong to completely lose his mind. His gloomy and angry voice suddenly sounded like a thunderclap that resounded throughout the entire training ground. As he spoke, his body gradually rose under the cover of the seven-colored light. At the same time, two ferocious and strange claws were changing in front of him. In an instant, a spiraling cyan rune rose up. The rune was octagonal, and the divine beast Azure Dragon was like a phantom soaring in the ninth heaven. At this moment, the energy of heaven and earth in the entire main arena suddenly surged violently and gathered towards the terrifying rune. His aura became more and more terrifying. The golden sword was still trembling in front of Kong Linghong's chest. He did not dare to take it, and he could not take it. At least, he could only do so after he killed Chen Hao. Such a strange and terrifying scene. In addition to the fact that he suddenly displayed an ultimate move that contained an aura of destruction, undoubtedly attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes widened, filled with fear. Azure Dragon Seal. Seeing that the claws had turned into sword fingers and he was shouting out the name of the secret technique, and with each word, the aura of the octagonal seal became several times more terrifying. Kong Linghong's sword fingers also gathered a bit of power behind him. As the words left his mouth, the sword fingers suddenly pointed towards Chen Hao. Die. Tantai Lian and the others screamed in horror. Everyone in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes and opened their mouths wide. Rumble. Roar. Accompanied by a terrifying explosion, the Azure Dragon in the octagonal seal suddenly let out a dragon's roar that resounded through the heavens and the earth. It actually flew out, as if it had condensed into a physical body, and contained an extremely terrifying power. It rumbled and swept towards Chen Hao, who was lying on the ground. Everyone's gaze simultaneously looked towards Chen Hao at this moment. Tantai Lian, Dongfeng Ting, and the others' faces had already turned pale. This time, no matter how much confidence they had in Chen Hao, it was already useless. They had already lost all hope. How could Chen Hao, who was lying motionless on the ground and covered in blood, be able to resist it? Without a doubt, Chen Hao, who was like a resplendent rising star, would fall like a meteor in this battle. Who, however, at this moment, What shocked everyone was that raging flames suddenly rose from Chen Hao, who was lying on the ground. Caw. A strange bird's cry suddenly sounded. Then a rumbling explosion spread out. Raging flames instantly filled the entire arena, turning it into a sea of fire. Who said the phoenix inheritance is useless? At this moment, Chen Hao's cold voice sounded from the sea of fire. No one saw his figure. They only saw that the sea of fire had transformed into a sea of blue flames that enveloped the roaring azure dragon. Terrifying explosions sounded continuously. After a full half a minute, there was finally no more sound. There was only the gradually weakening and dissipating flames, gradually revealing Chen Hao's figure. Other than that, there was nothing else. Yes, there was no Kong Linghong's figure. That existence had sent a message through the phoenix, and Chen Hao had completely followed the will of that existence by merging with all things in the world. The golden sword had to be stabbed into the opponent's body. The opponent had to use the ultimate move, the Azure Dragon Seal, and completely summon the Azure Dragon True Body. He had to be severely injured and spit out blood essence. Chen Hao did not understand why this was necessary. He originally did not intend to agree, but the tempting conditions passed to him by the phoenix made him agree. Chen Hao originally did not know the purpose of this, but now he understood. Capture the Azure Dragon and forcefully obtain its inheritance. He also understood that that existence was omniscient about his abilities, and even knew more about them than he did. But why do I have to almost die? Chen Hao still could not understand. Isn't this question simple? Treasure hunting sword spirit suddenly said when this thought appeared in Chen Hao's mind. Why? Of course it's to increase your strength. That thing has power but no strength. If you want it to unleash its power, it has to rely on your strength. You will understand this when you step into the golden elixir realm. This time, it directly burned all of your elixirs to capture the Azure Dragon. Naturally, it could not waste the opportunity to refine your body with the Nirvana flame. The rebirth of flames of desire is best when your body is severely injured, but you brat actually managed to avoid your vitals, which reduced the effect a little. Fortunately, it did not affect your vitals much. You will understand when your injuries recover. Good. Very good. At this moment, Fan Fong seemed to be Chen Hao's friend. When he saw that Chen Hao had turned the tables in such a way, he said excitedly. However, the malevolence and evil in his eyes sent chills down the spines of those around him. The nirvana of the phoenix is so powerful. Isn't this an immortal body? Such heavy injuries, there were so many holes. Did you see, they are all gone now. It was only at this moment that the crowd began to discuss spiritedly. The elders on the rostrum were all frowning in confusion. The others could not see it, but how could they not see it with their cultivation? Chen Hao had clearly only summoned a phoenix, a single phoenix. However, the final attack had condensed the nirvana flame that could only be condensed when a phoenix was connected to its body. This was simply too strange. It was something that was impossible even in legends. Yet it was happening right in front of their eyes. Chapter 189. As the battle between Chen Hao and Kong Linghong came to an end, all the possible top 10 battles in the group competition were over. On the morning of the second day, the group competition was finally over, and the top 20 were decided. Gao Jianfei, who was ranked first on the Black Tower tablet, Meng Yi, and Leng Yihan, who was ranked third, as well as the inheritor of the mythical beast inheritance, all advanced. Tan Tai Lian originally had no hope of advancing, but because Chen Hao had killed Kong Linghong, she was once again lucky to advance as the second in the group. Yang Fan was ranked sixth in the group. Considering his cultivation level, this result was already something to be proud of. In the quiet training room, Chen Hao sat cross-legged. Dense qi shrouded his body, rippling with vigorous and pure energy. Walala, Chen Hao, who appeared to be calm, actually emitted the sound of flowing water from within his body. The liquid energy was like a small river that surged endlessly within his meridians. Moreover, it seemed to be moving faster and faster. Chen Hao's mind sensed the changes within his body that had started on its own, and he understood what this represented, causing a trace of excitement to faintly suffuse his heart. After that, he calmed down. and his mind became clear as he allowed his ocean-like dantian to erupt with a surging torrent that gushed into his meridians, and it grew and multiplied endlessly as it continuously completed circulation after circulation. The energy flowing into his meridians became more and more vigorous and pure, and its speed became faster and faster. After circulating through his meridians, it was as if 10,000 streams were returning to the sea, and when it returned to his dantian again, its speed was even more astonishing. The sound of flowing water gradually turned into the terrifying sound of raging waves beating against the shore. It was also at this moment that the liquid energy core in Chen Hao's dantian suddenly set off an energy whirlpool, producing an extremely terrifying devouring power. Streams of energy that were rapidly flowing through his meridians suddenly stopped circulating under this terrifying devouring power, and frantically rushed back into his dantian one after another. Boom! An explosion occurred in Chen Hao's mind and dantian at the same time. Even if the conditions were right, at this time, Chen Hao did not dare to have the slightest bit of negligence. All of his mind merged into the upper dantian of his mind and the lower dantian of his dantian, and his body also began to hum and vibrate at high speed. Sounds of explosions, accompanied by the pain of his upper and lower dantian and meridians collapsing. Chen Hao could clearly feel that the dual barriers of the fusion of martial arts and will were gradually loosening under the continuous impact of the monstrous waves. Time passed second by second. Boom. After a full 2 hours, the fusion barrier, which was many times tougher than the barriers of ordinary cultivators, finally exploded with a boom. The surging energy in Chen Hao's body, which was on the verge of exploding, suddenly burst out. A dazzling 7-colored protective aura also appeared around Chen Hao's body with a boom. The surging energy suddenly seemed to flow into a wider channel. Although it didn't weaken at all, it turned into a slowly flowing river. The pain of Chen Hao's body exploding gradually disappeared, and he returned to calmness. Chen Hao let out a long breath, opening his eyes. 2 bright 7-colored rays of light flashed and disappeared. His handsome face had a trace of excitement, and the aura around his body was many times stronger. Chen Hao felt the vigorous energy in his body, and with a trace of surprise his eyes focused. He lightly struck out with his palm, and suddenly a 7-colored, incomparably condensed palm shadow slowly flew out, crossing a distance of more than 10 feet, and lightly pressed against the wall that contained the powerful restriction. Pung! Kacha-kacha, after a dull explosion, accompanied by cracking sounds, the wall of the training room actually began to crack like a spider web. The saint level is so strong. Chen Hao looked at the creeping cracks on the wall, his expression full of surprise as he murmured. Chen Hao was very clear about how strong the walls of the training room were. These days he had not stopped attacking, but to leave a shallow mark was already the limit. And now, he had only used 30% of his strength, and it had caused such a terrifying destructive power. It should be enough now, right? Chen Hao said in his mind. It should be enough now, right? In Chen Hao's mind, the little bird raised its head and repeated Chen Hao's question. A moment later, its human-like eyes flashed with a touch of joy. Chen Hao, it's barely enough. With the support of this phoenix and the azure dragon's energy, it should be enough. He said that you should try to restrain your aura as much as possible. Otherwise, if the opponent directly admits defeat, there will be no other way. I'll try my best, Chen Hao said. After that, he withdrew from his mind. How could it be so simple to gather the 5 divine beasts? The others were not fools. After seeing him kill them one by one, who would dare to come forward? What's more, he was not a homicidal maniac. Although they were all competitors, Chen Hao still felt a little uncomfortable using this method to improve himself. It did not matter if he killed Kong Linghong. He had asked for it. He had wanted to kill Chen Hao in the first place, and his arrogant manner was also courting death. But what about the others? If they were not as arrogant and despotic as Kong Linghong, no matter how cold and ruthless Chen Hao was, he would not have been able to do it. After all, these people had spent the blood and sweat of countless people to reach this point. They had also put in a lot of effort. Moreover, there was one more thing. The killing intent was too strong now. Perhaps even the elders on the platform would not be willing to see it. Although there were no restrictions in the rules of the competition, the disciples who had reached this point were all rare geniuses on the 100 Empire ranking. They were also disciples that these sects wanted to obtain. Chen Hao did not know that his state of mind had unknowingly changed a little after his sudden enlightenment. And it was this change that had brought him closer to the true Great Tao. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun was like fire. The 100 Empire ranking had also reached the time of the true peak showdown. Who would be the champion of the 100 Empire ranking? The crowd still did not have a definite answer in their hearts. However, the few contestants who had the strength to fight for the championship had already surfaced. Lung Yihan, who had comprehended the law of space and had astonishing battle prowess, was one of the strongest contenders. Although Lung Yihan had not obtained the inheritance of a divine beast, and had not become a martial sage, no one dared to underestimate him. His voice was the strongest. Someone who had truly comprehended the law of space was definitely strong. Furthermore, Lung Yihan's shocking sword move was truly breathtaking. Among the hundreds of thousands of spectators, there were many low-grade martial sages who could clearly sense great danger from Lung Yihan. Next was Chen Hao, as well as the inheritors of the Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, and Qilin Divine Beast's inheritances. Next was the Xuanwu inheritor, Liu Ran, who was an unknown factor. When Liu Ran met Gao Jianfei, he had chosen to admit defeat. However, he had not completed the first step of the Xuanwu fusion. The other inheritors of the divine beasts had already completed the fusion. Liu Ran should be able to complete it quickly as well. As long as he completed it before the battle of the top 20, he still had a high chance of winning. Aside from these people, even Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi were no longer in the list of contenders for the championship. Even though they were the first and second-ranked experts on the Black Pagoda steel, it was useless. They were only at the peak of martial ancestor realm. Although their battle prowess was strong, how could they resist a martial sage who had obtained the inheritance of a divine beast? The round-robin of the top 20 officially begins today. In order to avoid wasting time and unnecessary deaths, the arbitration team has decided to first select the participants. The list of the top 20 will be based on the group that qualified. Gao Jianfei Liu Ran. After Lu Wuxiang announced the top 20 participants, he continued. Now for the participants whose names I call out, please confirm your opponent and who you want to admit defeat to. Gao Jianfei. Hearing the referee's words, Gao Jianfei immediately stood up with a serious expression. When I call out your name, you answer whether you want to fight or not. Do you understand? Understood. Gao Jianfei replied in a low voice. The so-called selection was to delete the battles that required the participants to admit defeat. This would prevent them from wasting time, and also allow them to arrange the battles accordingly. Of course, the participants who had decided to fight could still choose to admit defeat when it was time to go on stage. After all, as the battle progressed, the participants would naturally be able to understand their opponent's true strength more clearly. Then it would be reasonable to make a new decision. It was not necessary to fight at this moment. However, those who said they would not fight were already admitting defeat, and could not be changed. Soon, all the participants were selected. As expected, the participants who decided to fight were Lung Yihan, Chen Hao Liu Ran of the Black Tortoise inheritance, Ao Huaguang of the Kirin inheritance, Yu Qiyu of the White Tiger inheritance, and Chu Liqin of the Vermilion Bird inheritance. The first choice was Gao Jianfei. Although he felt embarrassed, he still gave up the battle with Lung Yihan. He dared to challenge Lung Yihan back then, but Lung Yihan was now a martial ancestor realm. He was not an idiot and naturally did not want to die. Other than Lung Yihan, he also gave up on the other 5. Meng Yi also gave up on 6. Other than Chen Hao and the other 5, Tantai Lian also gave up on Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi. The others made the same choice as Tantai Lian. The final result of the selection was the top 8. The top 6 were Lung Yihan and Chen Hao. The 6 did not fight, which was equivalent to 14 victories. The 7th and 8th were Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi. Of the top 6, the 2 of them had admitted defeat. The bottom 12 had all admitted defeat to them. Whichever of the 2 won would be 7th. In other words, the 2 of them only needed one battle to end all the matches on the 100 Empire ranking. After a while, the names of the battles were listed. The great battle officially began. The first battle, Gao Jianfei against Meng Yi. Please come to the arena. Whoosh. The two of them immediately flew to the arena as fast as lightning. Coward, who was it that vowed to fight junior brother Lung Yihan on the 100 Empire ranking? Meng Yi said as he looked at Gao Jianfei with disdain after he entered the arena. Humph. A wise man submits to circumstances. Do you think I'm a brainless idiot like you? You want to use such words to provoke me? You're too stupid. Come, I'll show you the ranking on the pagoda stele. I, Gao Jianfei, am truly superior to you. This is the first update. Friends with monthly votes, please support Wuxian. If you don't have monthly votes, please cast your daily recommendation votes. Thank you. If you like this work, please come to Qidian.com to cast your recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 190. This should have been the battle that everyone looked forward to the most. Unfortunately, the rise of Lung Yihan, Chen Hao, and the inheritors of the divine beasts made Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi, the two super geniuses who originally occupied the top of the pagoda, and were feared by countless disciples on the 100 Empire ranking, seem a little boring at this moment. After a short bickering, the two of them started a vigorous battle. Their powerful strength and combat power were indeed unmatched within the martial arts grandmaster realm. Their ultimate skills were endless, causing the spectators with low cultivations to be shocked. However, compared to the battle between Chen Hao and Kong Linghong, it was still a level lower. The battle lasted for a full 10 minutes before it finally ended. The steady and solid Meng Yi defeated Gao Jianfei by a small margin and obtained 7th place, while Gao Jianfei was 8th. Immediately after, it was the battle between the weaker disciples like Tantai Lian. Tantai Lian displayed the power of the phoenix and easily defeated her opponent. After these people fought one after another, it was finally the battle between the 6 experts. The 8th battle, Liu Ran vs. Ao Huaguang. Please come to the arena. Following the loud voice of the referee, Liu Ran and Ao Huaguang, who had obtained the inheritance of the Black Tortoise and the Qilin respectively, immediately flew onto the arena. The martial arts practice field, which had been silent for a long time, once again emitted a majestic vitality. Countless people raised their spirits and looked at the arena with bright eyes. Although Liu Ran was the last to successfully merge with the divine beast, he was only 2 or 3 days later than the others. Furthermore, his inheritance was the Black Tortoise, which had the strongest defense among the 5 divine beasts. Against the Qilin inheritor Ao Huaguang, who had the most powerful and terrifying power, no one could be sure who would win. Boom. Following the referee's command to start the battle, the two of them, who had cold expressions, did not waste any more words. Waves of abnormally powerful 7-colored origin power radiance immediately spread out like a tide. At the same time, the shadows of the divine beasts appeared above their heads. One of them was bone-chilling and instantly caused the temperature of the entire arena to drop below freezing point, stirring up gusts of strong wind. The other one was powerful like a mountain. It emanated an aura that was heavy and vast like a mountain, and it was filled with strength. It forced the numerous strong gales to retreat 300 m away, and it was even to the extent that the icy cold aura was unable to approach it in the slightest. Before they even made a move, the powerful and terrifying aura and pressure from the two gods caused countless people to be shocked. Up until now, although Liu Ro and Ao Huaguang had displayed the power of the divine beast's inheritance, they had not used the power of the inheritance in their battles after they had advanced to martial sage. At this moment, facing a powerful opponent, the two of them no longer held back. Hiss! When the two people's auras were raised to the peak, 2 illusions of divine beasts appeared above their heads and immediately merged into their bodies. Liu Ro of the Black Tortoise inheritance seemed to have put on a tortoiseshell armor. The tortoiseshell shone with an icy blue crystal light and aura. Just by looking at its appearance, one could tell how strong its defense was. But that appearance, however, he did not dare to flatter him. If that was not a living tortoise, what was it? On the other hand, Ao Huaguang, who was originally like an iron tower and looked like a ferocious beast, became even more ferocious and terrifying after the Qilin's illusion merged with his body. His entire body was covered with sparkling yellow scales, and his strength was extremely powerful. Come on. Let's see if your tortoiseshell is harder, or if my strength is stronger. As Ao Huaguang spoke, he took a step forward. Instantly, the mountain shook and the earth shook. His huge body was like a small mountain that rumbled as he charged toward Li Yuro. A trace of coldness flashed in Li Yuro's eyes. Although the black tortoise inheritance was good, it was indeed an existence that could not be discussed. Faced with words like tortoiseshell, and he really did not have any temper. Therefore, he did not say anything. With a whoosh, he directly struck out a palm at Ao Huaguang as fast as lightning. Humph! Ao Huaguang's huge palm bent and stretched out, and an incomparably vigorous yuan qi condensed in his palm. It violently smashed Li Yuro's attack and advanced at high speed. The Qilin's strongest point was undoubtedly its strength, but its defense was equally strong. It actually relied on a pair of fleshy palms that were covered with scales to collide with Li Yuro's sharp and cold energy, and rapidly approached. A terrifying explosion accompanied by circles of strong wind swept out. In an instant, the two of them were in close combat. The power of Ao Huaguang's huge fist rapidly expanded, forcing Li Yuro to continuously retreat. However, Li Yuro's expression did not have the slightest bit of fear. This level of strength, under the protection of the tortoiseshell, caused little damage to the body. So what if he was strong? It was really not possible to do anything to him. But unfortunately, Li Yuro also could not do anything to the terrifying strength of Ao Huaguang. Looking at the terrifying battle between the two of them, everyone was still trembling with fear at the beginning, but after a few minutes, they became numb. One of them had a terrifying attack, and the other had a strong defense. Unexpectedly, neither of them had a change in expression, and they could not hurt the other in the slightest. It made everyone feel that it was neither painful nor itchy. Finally, when the neither painful nor itchy battle lasted for a full 15 minutes, the fiery Ao Huaguang could not bear it anymore. If this continued, the one who would lose would definitely be him. Li Yuro, who was like a coward, did not even attack at this moment. It was obvious that he wanted to exhaust him to death. Therefore, Ao Huaguang did not continue. With a loud shout, his huge body suddenly rose up. With a rumble, his originally mountain-like body suddenly grew several times larger at this moment. Roar! A resounding bestial roar that was filled with endless pressure suddenly erupted. Ao Huaguang finally used the strongest move of the Qilin inheritance, Qilin Seal. Immediately, a force that was like a mountain and an ocean filled the entire arena. The violent energy of heaven and earth crazily surged. A mountain that was hundreds of feet tall and hundreds of feet wide, shining with a dazzling earthy yellow light, quickly condensed above Ao Huaguang's hands. At this moment, Ao Huaguang was like a ferocious Hercules with a ferocious gaze and a ferocious face. The moment the mountain condensed, it fiercely smashed down on Li Yuro's head. Die! Accompanied by Ao Huaguang's loud shout, the huge mountain crashed down with a loud bang. In your dreams, Li Yuro, who was already prepared, activated the black tortoise seal at the same time when Ao Huaguang used his ultimate move. After a loud shout, his arms, legs, and head suddenly shrank into the tortoise shell, and at this moment, the tortoise shell expanded at a terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, it was like an incomparably huge pot lid that was upside down on the arena. On it, a dazzling crystal light shone and was covered with black tortoise patterns. At this moment, everyone in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes and stared at the terrifying scene of the mountain smashing down on the pot lid. Without a doubt, after this attack, the victor would be decided. If the tortoise shell was smashed, then Ao Huaguang, who had exhausted all his energy, would win. If the tortoise shell was firm, then it might be a draw, because with such a terrifying ultimate move, even the defensive Li Yuro would definitely have exhausted all his energy. Bang! Rumble! The moment the mountain smashed down on the pot lid, the mountain shook and the earth shook. The entire martial arts practice field, which was dozens of miles in radius, trembled violently. Some of the spectators who didn't have much cultivation were directly shaken half a meter from their seats, and let out countless terrified screams. On the main arena, dust and smoke billowed. The huge mountain stood tall and upright, and the tortoise-shell's shadow couldn't be seen. Smashed to death. At this moment, countless people thought in horror. This scene was obviously the tortoise-shell being smashed flat, and Liu Ro, who was hiding inside, must have been crushed into a meat paste. However, a few seconds later, when the mountain formed by energy began to dissipate, what surprised everyone was that a large piece of the hard arena floor actually appeared. At the same time, it also gradually dissipated, revealing a huge deep pit. In the pit, Liu Ro stood up with blood at the corner of his mouth, battered and exhausted. And Ao Huaguang, who was standing in the air, fell to the ground with a bang. His face was also pale, and he stood up shakily. The final result was a draw. No one had the strength to attack again. Godly tortoise. Mother, isn't this Liu Ro in an invincible position? If he tightens his tortoise shell, no one can hurt him. Too awesome. Fortunately, his attack wasn't strong, otherwise, Ao Huaguang would definitely lose. Countless people in the crowd were discussing. The defense of a cowardly tortoise was really too strong, too shocking. One had to know that the floor of the arena contained extremely strong restrictions, and the material was precious ore, but it was smashed into a huge pit that was several meters deep and tens of feet wide. And Liu Ro had only exhausted his strength and suffered some injuries. Chen Hao frowned slightly, staring at the huge pit, a faint light flashing in his eyes. Obviously, even Chen Hao wasn't sure if he could break Liu Ro's defense at this moment. Taking a deep breath, Chen Hao turned to look at Leng Yihan. He saw Leng Yihan also staring at the deep pit, but immediately after, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he lazily leaned back in his seat. It seems that his realm has increased again. Seeing this scene, Chen Hao couldn't help but think to himself. The last time he saw Leng Yihan, Chen Hao already knew that he was far inferior to Leng Yihan. At this moment, after half a year of training, Chen Hao was sure that he could catch up to Leng Yihan. But now, Leng Yihan's expression told Chen Hao that he had enough confidence to break Liu Ro's defense. Thinking of Leng Yihan's stunning sword, Chen Hao frowned slightly and thought to himself, what if these guys are killed by Leng Yihan in advance? If that's really the case, my chances will be even lower. Chen Hao hesitated slightly, but finally decided to greet him. Brother Leng. Chen Hao condensed his voice into a line and transmitted it to Leng Yihan, who was not far away. Leng Yihan was slightly taken aback and looked in Chen Hao's direction. Can I ask you for a small favor? Help. Of course, if you win against me, it'll be your request. If you lose, it'll be two of my requests. Anything is fine. Just say it. Leng Yihan's lips curled up slightly. He seemed to be very straightforward, but his words were very stingy. The reason for this was that Leng Yihan wasn't sure if he could defeat Chen Hao, who had completely exceeded his expectations. Second update. Requesting recommendation tickets, monthly tickets. Thank you. Chapter 191. Okay. If you meet Liu Ro and the other divine beast inheritors, don't kill them. Just defeat them. Chen Hao said readily. If he really asked Leng Yihan for help for no reason, Chen Hao would be embarrassed. After all, he only had a relationship with Leng Yihan because of the nameless old man. Moreover, Chen Hao knew that Leng Yihan was the kind of person who cared about fair exchanges. Otherwise, he would not have used the Yin origin stone to exchange for the statue. Don't kill them? Defeat them? What do you want to do? Leng Yihan looked at Chen Hao from afar. His eyes were as bright as swords, and he asked with a trace of doubt. It's useful. Since you agreed, it's settled. It's my turn. Okay. Leng Yihan frowned slightly and replied. At this moment, the referee called Chen Hao's name. The ninth match, Chen Hao against Chu Liqin. Chu Liqin, the inheritor of the divine beast Vermilion Bird. The Vermilion Bird was the divine beast closest to the phoenix among the 5 divine beasts. Not only were their energy attributes similar, but their appearances were also very similar. The Vermilion Bird's inheritance, compared to the phoenix's weakness of needing 2 people to work together, was naturally much stronger. If there was no battle between Chen Hao and Kong Linghong, There was no doubt that Chu Liqin's chances of winning would be higher in everyone's hearts. But at this moment, it was hard to say who would win and who would lose. Chen Hao's chances of winning were slightly higher. After all, Chen Hao's combat strength was stronger than Chu Liqin's. But it was only a little. If they both used their ultimate moves, it was really hard to say who would win. Chen Hao was able to defeat Kong Linghong, but it was just a narrow victory. Whoosh whoosh. Chen Hao and Chu Liqin appeared on the arena at almost the same time. Their eyes met, neither giving way to the other. Obviously, both of them were very confident, especially Chen Hao. This time, Tantai Lian and the others who were familiar with Chen Hao felt extremely surprised. A wisp of arrogance actually appeared on Chen Hao's handsome and extraordinary face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and it was filled with an arrogant, evil and cold aura. His deep black eyes were filled with naked provocation. Chu Liqin, you're just a puny vermilion bird, so you should just admit defeat obediently. Even the Azure Dragon was blasted into smithereens by my phoenix, so you're on par with him at best. If you don't want to die, then it's not too late. Otherwise, Chen Hao won't show mercy to the fairer sex. Chen Hao's lips slightly curled up as he spoke dismissively. That expression, that appearance, was simply arrogant to the extreme. He was the typical type of person who was looking for trouble. This scene made Dongfeng Ting, Tantai Lian, and even Leng Yihan frown slightly, feeling very strange. Was this still the Chen Hao he knew? Are you trying to intimidate me? I, Chu Liqin, am not one to be intimidated. It's just a phoenix's nirvana. Others may not know, but do you think I don't know? No matter what secret technique you use, don't even think about defeating me. I'd like to see who's going to die. Chu Liqin said coldly. Her face shone with anger, and her fighting spirit began to soar wildly. If that's the case, then I'll send you to the afterlife. Chen Hao said casually, but his face began to shine with a trace of seriousness. In the eyes of the crowd, it seemed that Chen Hao really wanted to intimidate Chu Liqin into admitting defeat, but in reality, he had no confidence in defeating Chu Liqin at all. You talk too much nonsense. Chu Liqin said coldly when the referee announced the start of the match. As she spoke, there was a boom, and flames spewed out from her body. In an instant, her entire person was merged into the protection of the flames. At the same time, Chu Liqin opened her hand in the air. Instantly, a long river of flames spewed out from her palm, and condensed into a huge flaming demon palm that rumbled toward Chen Hao. What a powerful energy! Chen Hao was slightly shocked. The aura of heavenly fire? At the same time, Little Bird's shocked voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. She actually comprehended half a step into heavenly fire. Could it be that she has a fire spirit body? What do you mean? Chen Hao's figure suddenly floated up as he used the ultimate martial arts technique, the wave-like carefree steps, and asked in his mind at the same time. The flames of the vermilion bird, and us phoenixes are nirvana flames. As the successor's fusion with us increases, the level of nirvana flames will also gradually increase. The highest level is nirvana heavenly fire. This can only be achieved at the 9th step of fusion. However, this successor is clearly only at the 1st step of fusion, but the flames she emits contain the aura of heavenly fire. There's only one possibility, and that is that her physical body is the fire spirit body that is most compatible with the vermilion bird's inheritance. Chen Hao, whether you can win this time will depend on whether you can withstand her flames. No wonder you're so confident. It's only interesting when there's a challenge. Chen Hao said and cut off the connection with Little Bird. His eyes shone with a strong fighting spirit. You still want to use this kind of footwork to dodge? I'd like to see how you dodge. Sea of Purgatory Flames. Seeing that Chen Hao's figure was erratic in dodging her flaming demon hand, Chu Liqin snorted coldly. Her hands suddenly crossed in front of her and tore apart. Boom. In an instant, the flaming demon hand that missed exploded. At the same time, countless flaming demon hands shot out from Chu Liqin's hands like a string of cannons. They flew in all directions and exploded when they reached a certain location. Huff! 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 In just a breath's time, the entire arena had turned into a sea of flames. Billowing heat waves swept out from the arena. Even the powerful restrictions of the arena were unable to completely conceal the heat waves. The temperature of the entire martial arts practice field suddenly rose by several times. An invisible pressure made the breathing of some of the audience members with weaker cultivations quicken. They felt as if they couldn't breathe. What a terrifying flame! Feeling Chu Laqin's terrifying power, many people's expressions became extremely shocked. The power that Chu Laqin displayed this time was much stronger than the sea of flames that she released when she was in the martial ancestor realm. Her aura was so terrifying even through the arena's protective boundary. How would Chen Hao, who was in the depths of the flames, feel? Split. In the arena, Chen Hao, who was engulfed in flames, stopped his erratic figure. He bent his knees, took a feint, opened his palms, and drew arc-like trajectories in front of him that seemed to be slow but was actually fast. His body moved with his palms. His body suddenly shook, creating afterimages in a small area, causing his body to become blurry. At this moment, Chen Hao's palms suddenly slapped outwards. Countless palm shadows condensed into an invisible barrier, forcibly blocking the surging flames. What was even more strange was that these flames actually began to revolve around Chen Hao under the gentle and smooth palm shadows of Chen Hao. They were actually unable to approach Chen Hao at all. In a moment, the flames around him became more and more condensed. They were especially bright in the sea of flames. Condense. Although Chu Laqin was shocked that Chen Hao had once again used a strange unique skill to block her flames, she did not care at all. She had launched an all-around attack. She did not expect to be able to restrain Chen Hao at all. She only wanted to break Chen Hao's erratic and unpredictable magical footwork. At this moment, she had already achieved her goal. With a furious roar, under Chu Laqin's control, the sea of flames in the entire arena suddenly began to converge toward Chen Hao at an astonishing speed. One split, one condensed, and they erupted almost at the same time. Moreover, when the sea of flames appeared, the crowd could no longer see Chen Hao's figure. They only saw a ball of flames becoming more and more condensed. Because of this, except for Chu Laqin and Chen Hao, almost everyone in the entire martial arts practice field thought that Chu Laqin had used the flames to trap Chen Hao. With Chu Laqin's oppression, all the flames converged toward Chen Hao, completely imprisoning Chen Hao in the flames. Wow. Impressive, impressive. What unique skill did Chen Hao use? It's too impressive. Azure Dragon, are you still not convinced? A master with such talent is much better than that fellow of yours. Haha. In Chen Hao's mind, the little bird, who was always on standby, spoke to the Azure Dragon who was continuously providing it with energy. Even if I'm convinced, I'm not convinced by you. What are you so proud of? If I were you, I could save Chen Hao a lot of effort, you little bird with a small brain. Who are you scolding? You're just a little snake. Where's your high IQ? If you have the guts, say it. If it's useful to say it, you'll be number 2? You're the fucking number 2. Leave it to and Xiaoke, they're more suitable. Anyway, I'm leaving, you can be your boss. Tell me what's the plan? The little bird said. These fellows had been in contact with humans for too long. Although they did not have the temperament of humans, they had more or less assimilated some human habits. Therefore, they were rather proficient in scolding people in certain aspects. Are you an idiot? Don't you know how to provoke the vermilion bird? Provoking it will naturally affect the inheritor. As long as its power explodes to a certain level, the inheritor will be able to resist using the vermilion bird seal? That makes sense, Kiki. When the little bird heard the Azure Dragon's words, its eyes flashed with a hint of craftiness as it let out 2 strange cries. Immediately after, the little bird began to stimulate its energy in Chen Hao's body without asking for permission from Chen Hao. Boom. Chen Hao, who was using the fused energy to activate the Taiji mysteries of the pugilistic world's ultimate technique, suddenly spewed out intense flames from his body. In an instant, the phoenix's flames entered Chu Laqin's flames. The instant the 2 types of energy came into contact, the phoenix and the vermilion bird's senses were immediately connected. Little bird, Xiaoke number 2. If you have the guts, come out and fight this phoenix directly. Back then, this phoenix and the phoenix were on par with you, but now this phoenix alone will defeat you. Kiki. Bullshit. You and your lover aren't my match and you alone? Dream on. If you have the guts, come out. Stop being so wishy-washy. Do you want to learn from that cowardly turtle? You seem very similar. Xiao Ke. All right. Just you wait. I'll make you wait another 1,000 or 10,000 years to find an inheritor. Boom. The irritable vermilion bird was so angry that its lungs were about to explode. Similarly, without Chu Liqin's orders, it madly gathered its energy. In an instant, Chu Liqin felt the flames in her body burn fiercely, as if her body was about to explode. This terrifying power caused Chu Liqin's fighting spirit to soar madly. She watched as all the flames gathered towards Chen Hao, but they seemed to be completely blocked by Chen Hao's strange method, unable to move forward at all. Under the terrifying rotation, she even felt as if she had lost control. Chu Liqin did not hesitate any longer. A strange bird's cry that resounded through the heavens suddenly erupted from Chu Liqin's body, and the vermilion bird phantom flew out from her head. Third update. Brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes and recommendation votes, please vote for Dark Mountain. Thank you. I already have 23 votes today. Can I still have 17 votes? Chapter 192. Let's see how you're going to block it. Chu Liqin stared at the rapidly spinning giant fireball. Following the explosion of the vermilion bird's energy, she took a step forward, formed a seal with both hands, and suddenly blasted it out. Vermilion bird seal. The moment Chu Liqin condensed the vermilion bird seal, violent flames erupted like a volcano. In an instant, the endless flames, containing terrifying power and pressure, swept towards Chen Hao. Boom. The flames that contained the aura of the heavenly fire were indeed extremely powerful. The moment the vermilion bird seal was used, its momentum was terrifying. The raging flames had completely turned a deep blue color. Even the space within the stage started to distort, rippling violently as if it could not withstand the high temperature of the flames, and was about to collapse. Go for me. Sensing that Chu Liqin had unleashed the vermilion bird seal, Chen Hao's expression was calm and unperturbed. Amidst the flames, his two palms were drawing graceful arcs. At this moment, his body suddenly trembled, and his palms instantly transformed into numerous afterimages. Softness turned to toughness as he abruptly struck out. Boom. The spinning giant fireball suddenly separated from Chen Hao's body like a tornado, setting off monstrous waves of fire. Jie. At the same time, the shadow of the phoenix flew out from above Chen Hao's head, and let out a cry that resounded through the heavens and earth. The terrifying nirvana flame instantly condensed into the phoenix seal. It contained an incomparably terrifying energy as it whistled towards the vermilion bird seal. How is this possible? Sensing the power of the phoenix, the vermilion bird that had condensed the seal was filled with shock. Fire, it was the nirvana flames that were of a lower level than it, but the energy contained within was so vigorous that it had reached an inconceivable realm. What made it even more surprised was that it seemed to have caught a trace of familiar energy. That energy was definitely something that only the Azure Dragon possessed. The wood attribute was extremely derived from the wind attribute, and because of this, when the three types of energy were superimposed, fire would burn wood, and wind would blow fire, causing its power to increase by many times. How could the vermilion bird not be shocked? However, the vermilion bird seal had already condensed, and it was too late to stop. Whoosh! Just as the two ultimate moves were about to collide, Chen Hao was like a gust of wind that blended into the world. Using the carefree steps, he held the invincible golden crystal sword in his hand. Withstanding the endless flames that contained the aura of the heavenly fire, he was as fast as lightning, silently stabbing towards Chu Liqin's right chest. At this moment, all of Chu Liqin's attention was focused on activating the vermilion bird seal, and the energy in her body was being crazily extracted. How could she have known that Chen Hao, who had used the phoenix seal, could still withdraw? This was absolutely inconceivable. This was because any cultivator would not be able to divert their attention when they performed such an ultimate technique that completely surpassed their own level. Not to mention, he had to multitask to escape and attack the enemy at the same time. But Chen Hao did it. This was because not only did he have the Azure Dragon's energy to support the little bird, he also had the mysterious existence in his mind to control it. However, Chen Hao's figure had indeed disappeared from the spot. Chu Liqin's eyes widened, and all the hairs on her body stood on end. Although she did not understand how Chen Hao did it, she knew that she was now in absolute danger. Someone who had used the Phoenix Seal and still had the energy to attack her body. How could she resist? I concede. Without any hesitation, Chu Liqin frantically activated the Vermilion Bird Seal. And at the same time she could not move, she cried out in alarm. Unfortunately, before she could say the word lose, a dazzling golden light suddenly appeared in front of her. Chu Liqin's eyes widened in shock, and her eyes were filled with unwillingness and anger. Risking the backlash of the Vermilion Bird Seal, she sent out an attack behind her. Poof. But even so, her full and round breasts were still pierced through by the treasured sword behind her. A dazzling golden sword tip was revealed, and then it disappeared. The sword was drawn and sheathed, extremely fast. The moment the sword was drawn, Chu Liqin felt a terrifying devouring power that caused the essence blood in her body to spurt out, turning into a blood arrow that flew towards the Vermilion Bird Seal. Right chest. Not the left chest. This was the only thing that made Chu Liqin feel fortunate, but also slightly puzzled. Without a doubt, her desperate attack had been effective, and it had hit Chen Hao. But Chu Liqin was clear that in the process of the Vermilion Bird Seal crazily absorbing energy, her attack was not very effective. Chen Hao clearly could have pierced his heart, so why did he avoid it and let her go? Rumble. The two strongest attacks finally collided. Dazzling and terrifying flames filled the entire stage, and the ground shook. The temperature of the entire martial arts practice field suddenly rose by several times, causing the air to churn terrifyingly. Gusts of wind suddenly rose in a radius of 10 miles. Chu Liqin's eyes widened. The moment the Vermilion Bird Seal exploded, all the energy in her body had been sucked dry. At the same time, because she had also received the backlash of the Vermilion Bird Seal, she fell onto the stage with a bang. Chen Hao, who had received Chu Liqin's attack, also tumbled down from the sky. The Phoenix Seal, or more accurately the Phoenix Seal, had also sucked out all of his energy and fell onto the ground. Ji. After a loud and clear cry, a figure that seemed to have exhausted all of its energy disappeared into Chen Hao's body. The battle ended. You're very strong. Unfortunately, you underestimated your opponent too much. When the flames disappeared, the two figures appeared on the stage. They were in a sorry state, and they struggled to stand up. Chen Hao stared at Chu Liqin, who was clutching her chest as she struggled to stand up. However, at this moment, Chu Liqin's expression changed drastically, and her heart was filled with shock. It was not because Chen Hao had spared her life, nor was it because she had lost the battle, but she could no longer sense the aura of the Vermilion Bird Divine Beast's inheritance. She wanted to question Chen Hao, but she forcibly suppressed the urge to speak. Yes, she could not speak. If Chen Hao gave her a definite answer, what would the result be? Everyone would know that she had lost the Vermilion Bird Divine Beast's inheritance. With her current ranking and cultivation level of the martial sage realm, she could choose any of the sects present. But what about after entering a sect? The treatment would probably be two different concepts. Moreover, she could not be sure if the Vermilion Bird Divine Beast's inheritance was really gone. It could also be that the injury was hidden in the depths of her mind, right? Chu Liqin quickly forced herself to calm down, and stared at Chen Hao without batting an eyelid. This match is a draw. Sensing the aura of the two, the referee immediately announced. A draw, it's actually a draw again. It seems that the power of the Divine Beast's inheritance is about the same, and no one can do anything to the other. In fact, Chen Hao's inheritance is much weaker. What's strong is his combat strength, which makes up for the weakness. If he did not use his strange movement technique and risk the Phoenix Seal's backlash to stab with his sword, I'm afraid it would not be a draw. Indeed, the Phoenix inheritance is originally of little value. For Chen Hao to use it to such an extent, I'm afraid only a super abnormal talent like his would be able to do so, right? When Chen Hao and Chu Liqin returned to their seats, countless people's eyes focused on Chen Hao as they discussed. No one knew that Chunhao was actually not injured at all. His current appearance was completely faked. In this battle, he did not even reveal his aura as a saint because the color of his elemental energy did not change. Moreover, Chunhao's powerful soul power had even fooled the elders on the rostrum. Chunhao did not kill Chulichin on purpose. He thought of all kinds of possibilities and finally chose this. Perhaps this was the only way to quietly capture all the inheritances of the 5 divine beasts, without scaring anyone. Moreover, Chunhao was sure that if Chulichin was not stupid, she would not reveal that the vermilion bird's inheritance had disappeared. The only regret was that although Chunhao had the highest chance of collecting all the inheritances of the divine beasts, he might lose to Lung Yihan in the 100 Empire rankings. But there was no other way. Chunhao could only do this. Although he did not know what Lung Yihan's conditions were, the two of them had agreed not to force each other. Therefore, Chunhao did not care much. The last battle of the day, the 10th battle, Lung Yihan versus Qiyu. Please enter the arena. While the crowd was still discussing, the referee's voice rang out again. Yu Qiyu, the inheritor of the divine beast White Tiger. Among the 5 divine beasts, if the black tortoise's defense was the strongest, then the white tiger's attack was the strongest. Not in terms of strength, but attack. The white tiger was a metal-type divine beast. Its strength was not as vast as the Qilins, but its attack was the sharpest and most invincible. The enchanting and seductive Yu Qiyu flew into the arena, with a serious expression. Among the 5 people, whether it was Yu Qiyu or the others, the one they did not want to meet the most was Lung Yihan. Lung Yihan, who had comprehended the true essence of space and was extremely powerful, could be fatal when he attacked. Even if he was only a 9th-grade martial grandmaster, no one knew if his martial sage realm and inheritance could withstand Lung Yihan's attack. Even Chunhao could not be sure before they fought. The only person who was not worried was the black tortoise inheritor, Li Yuran. He did not know if the others could do it, but he had absolute confidence in the defense of the black tortoise shell. When the referee announced the start of the match, Yu Qiyu did not hesitate to bring up layers of protective aura. It was the 7-colored protective aura that symbolized the martial saint realm. However, there was a slight difference. Her 7-colored aura was filled with majestic golden energy. It was obvious that the metallic energy had taken the dominant position. The white tiger phantom also merged with Yu Qiyu's body at the fastest speed. The sharp and unparalleled aura was like an invincible sword light. It carried a cold aura, and pierced into the hearts of the crowd. The crowd that was still discussing suddenly quieted down. They all held their breaths and stared at the arena with wide eyes. However, what surprised everyone was that Lung Yihan's figure, which was as straight as a sword, did not release any aura. Only his sharp and soul-stirring eyes were staring at the enchanting Yu Qiyu. He said lightly, "Make your move. Let me see how powerful the white tiger's attack is. Last 3 days, I beg for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.